Okay, welcome to SAT practice test number 6. We're going to start off with the reading. As always, the first reading is a fiction passage. This is written in 2009. We like that. The wording and the way that the passage will develop will be something that we can understand. It's not written back in the 1700s or something like that. So let's dive right into it. So the main purpose of the first paragraph is to. So main purpose, main idea, question, and we're going to underline certain words here. So what are we doing? Are we characterizing this person as a loving father? Are we talking about the schedule of his day, his various money-making ventures, or are we contrasting these two men's lifestyles? So for this one, I'm going to go to lines 6 and 7 because it is the first paragraph, 6 and 7. Now, I'm going to butcher these names, so I'm just going to say N for this guy. So N, of course, knew that he must proliferate his sources of revenue. So sources of revenue, meaning more than one. So he set up a flour mill, fish farming, radios, and fixed watches. So if you look at this first paragraph, it talks a lot about these various ways that he makes money. So if I go here and I look at those various money-making schemes, well, there it goes. So you would start at lines 6 to 7, but as you move forward, you'll see that it talks specifically about the various ways that he tries to make money. Number 2, as used in line 16, kicks most nearly means what? So we're going to go up to line 16. I'm going to start up around here. He did not did more even when asked to fix watches, though that enterprise did spectacularly badly, and in fact earned him more kicks than kudos. So these two words are opposite to one another, right? So kicks is going to be opposite of kudos. Now this is tough because kudos is people saying, hey, good job, you did well. So it'd be the opposite of someone saying, hey, you did good. Okay? So if I'm looking at this, if it's the opposite of him doing good or the opposite of him getting compliments, well, then what would he get? He'd be getting complaints. So if I go back to line 16 and what I see here, in fact, earned him more kicks than kudos. So not compliments, complaints. These two words play off each other. So for number 2, I'm going to get B. Number 3, the author uses the images of an engineer at sea, lines 23 to 28, most likely to what? Let's underline these specific words. Suggest that his dreams have a more exciting profession. Highlight the fact that his primary job is to tend wells. Reinforce the idea that N has many different occupations in his life, or emphasize how demanding his work is. Let's go to 23 and 28. Grizzled, his peculiar aviated glasses bent and smudged. N tended the household machinery, the air conditioners, water heaters, refrigerators, and water pumps like an engineer. There it is. I see that word I'm looking for. Like an engineer tending the boilers on a foundering steamer in an Atlantic gale. This is important. The word foundering means that this steamer, this ship, is having a tough time in the water, and then we see an Atlantic gale. A gale is a type of storm. So think about this ship in the storm moving back and forth and very uncomfortable, hard to do any work, and then it's comparing N's work to an engineer on this boat. So clearly it's a hard job, right? It's hard to do this on the boat that this engineer is on. So N's job is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to do. So let's look at it. His dreams of an exciting profession, that doesn't make any sense. His primary job is to tend the wells. Well, yeah, we know that, but it doesn't tie into the difficulty of the job, right? Because we're comparing it to the person on the steamer during that rough storm. His different occupations doesn't make sense, or emphasize how demanding, there it is, demanding his work is, how hard it is. And there's the comparison to the engineer at sea. So number 3, I'm going to put D. Number 4. Which choice best supports the claim that N performs his duties for H well, so that he's good at his job. So performs his duties well. He's good at his job. So I'm going to look at these lines and then see. So for argument's sake, and actually not for argument's sake, for time's sake, let's take a look at lines 28 to 32. So where does it say that he does his job well? 28 to 32. 25, 26, 27, 28. By his superhuman efforts. So if it's superhuman efforts, that means, yeah, he's doing above and beyond. He almost managed to maintain KKH in the same mechanical cocoon, cooled and bathed and lighted and fed, that the landowner enjoyed in Lahore. So his superhuman efforts, he was almost able to keep this guy in that perfect place, that cooled and bathed. So the big part here is superhuman efforts. So seeing that word superhuman and saying superhuman efforts, it does say that he performed his duties well. He performed his job well through those superhuman efforts. The answer number 4 is A. 5. In the context of the conversation between N and H, N's comments in lines 43 to 52 mainly serve to what? So what are we doing here? Is it meant to flatter H by mentioning how vast his lands are? So vast his lands are, flattering. Boast to H about how competent and reliable N is. Emphasize N's diligence and loyalty to H. So loyalty, diligence, competent, vast his lands are. Notify H that now intends to quit his job. So really what we're looking at is, are we talking about how vast the land is, how competent he is at his job, his diligence and loyalty to his boss, or that he's going to quit? So let's go to 43 to 52. Here we go. This is where the lines start. Sir, as you know, your lands stretch from here to the Indus, and on these lands are fully 17 tube wells. And to tend these 17 tube wells, there is but one man, me, your servant. In your service, I've earned these gray hairs. It's an important line there. In your service, I've earned these gray hairs. Here he bowed his head to show the gray. And now I cannot fulfill my duties as I should. Enough, sir, I beg you, forgive me my weakness. Better a darkened horse and proud hunger within than disgrace in the light of day. So it's important to understand here is that he describes, the land that he works on, and basically not the context of this is not how much land the boss has, but really he's saying, look what I've done. I've worked so hard. I've earned these gray hairs. And then he bows his head and he goes, no, I can't fulfill my duties as I should. That's really important, as I should. So he's saying, like, I'm not comfortable doing the job the way I'm doing it now, with how hard I've worked over, the past year. So if we go down there, he's not flattering him, because when he mentions the lands, it's to hit the next point of really how hard he works. So we're not going to go with A. Boast to H about how competent and reliable he is. Well, reliable would definitely say, like, hey, I show up to work every day. I do the job well. He actually has the opposite. Like, I can't do the job well anymore. So we got rid of that. Emphasizes diligence and loyalty. This one kind of works. And the reason is because the loyalty is like, look at all these gray hairs I've earned by, just being here and not giving up for you. Notify that he tends to quit. He doesn't say anything about quitting. He just says, hey, I can't do my job well enough. Now, this is important to understand. He says he can't do his job well enough. And he also says that he's earned these gray hairs. So there we see those two things, diligence and loyalty. So the answer number 5 is going to be C. 6. N uses the word bridegroom, line 62, mainly to emphasize that he's no longer what? This is a tough one. You kind of either know the word or you don't. So, but sir, on the bicycle now with my old legs, so he's an old man, and with the many injuries I've received when heavy machinery fell on me, I cannot any longer bicycle about like a bridegroom from farm to farm. So he's old, he's been hurt, he can't be like a bridegroom. So really it's the opposite of old. He can't be young anymore. A bridegroom is basically a young man. So he's no longer what? In love, naive, busy, or young? The answer is for 6 is D, young. Bridegroom meaning young. Number 7. It can easily be inferred from the passage that H provides M with a motorcycle mainly because what? Is it because H appreciates N? H sees benefits to himself. N's speech is the most eloquent that he's ever heard. Or N threatens to quit if H doesn't agree to give him a motorcycle. So N threatens to quit. So why does he give him a motorcycle? Now, this is important when I go through this, because this is your first connector, right? So from question 7, we go to 8, where we're looking for where H says, yeah, I'm going to give him a motorcycle for this reason. So for time's sake, for number 8, let's look at lines 66 to 68. So I'm going to go to 66, 68. And what's the solution, asked H, seeing that they had come to the crux. He didn't particularly care one way or the other, except that it touched on his comfort, a matter of great interest to him. So look, it touched on his comfort, meaning if H gives N a motorcycle, it will make his life easier. Okay? He will, H, the boss, would have to do less because N could get around. I hate saying H and N, but I'm sorry. I'm not going to butcher their names the whole entire time. So it touched on his comfort, a matter of great interest to him. So really, he's giving, right, in these lines, we see it talking about the motorcycle. So that's for 8. We're going to get B. The answer B for 8 is for 7. It's going to talk about that, he wants the motorcycle for himself. It's going to make his life easier. Even if N's using it, it's going to make H's life easier. So life easier. Appreciates the work, benefit to himself. Okay, there we go, right? It's good benefit to himself, makes his life easier. Does not talk about how good the speech was. Really, N never really threatens to quit in those lines. Just says, hey, I want to do my job better. We get rid of there. And then if we narrow it down to A and B, he doesn't appreciate how N does his work. In the end of the day, he sees benefit to himself. Basically, you know what? This is going to make me more comfortable. So benefit to himself. 7 is B, and 8 is B. Number 9, the passage states that the farm managers react to N receiving the motorcycle with what? So these other people, their reaction when N gets the motorcycle. And we're going to look at around line 74 for this. The crops that year had been good. H felt expansive in front of the fire. And so, much to the disgust of the farm managers, N received a brand new motorcycle. So they're angry, right? They're angry at him. So they're like, ugh. They're disgusted by it, and it's important to understand disgust. So clearly, it's not going to be happiness. Clearly, it's not going to be indifference. But envy and disgust both have similar. They're both negative in their connotations. However, if I go back and look at 74 and I see the word disgust, if you're disgusted at something, you are not envious of them. Excuse me. The word up here is much to the disgust. Yeah. Really, it's the same word. So the answer would be A for 9. But think about it. Like if you're envious of something, you want something that the other person has. They don't do that. They're disgusted by it. If you're disgusted by something, you don't want it. So the answer for number 9 is A. 10. According to the passage, why does N consider to be the best result? What does N consider to be the best result of getting the motorcycle? We're going to look at lines 81 and 82 for that. So what? People start calling him uncle. He expands his business, he educates his daughter, or he spends more time with his wife. Pretty straightforward. Let's look at 81 to 82. So the motorcycle increased his status, gave him weight, so that people began calling him uncle and asking his opinion on world affairs about which he knew nothing, absolutely nothing. He could now range further, doing a much wider business. But best of all, right? We saw uncle as an answer, but then it's saying best of all. So this is going to be the answer right here. He could now spend every night with his wife. There we go. Straightforward. So people call him uncle? Yeah, but not the most important thing. Does not talk about expanding his business. Does not talk about educating his daughters. Best of all, he could spend more time with his wife. The answer to number 10 is D. Moving forward, we'll get into the first nonfiction article, questions 11 through 21. Okay, we're on questions 11 through 21, your first nonfiction passage in SAT practice test number 6. written in 2009, which is good. Also, from this beginning, we can get a good feel of what the passage is going to be about. Public trust in the news. So how do people in the public trust the news? Let's dive right in. Question 11. The main purpose of the passage, so main idea question, is are we analyzing the technological developments, discussing the change in perception, show how journalists frame of value influence the production of news stories, or challenge the conventional view that news is a form of public knowledge? So if we're looking at this, kind of that main purpose, I would go, really what we can do is we can look at the entirety of the passage. So first of all, it goes from 1985 to 2011, and people seeing as news as inaccurate or favoring one side. So clearly, we're showing a larger time frame. I'm then going to go around line 25, where it talks about that larger time frame as well. So we're going to go like right here. So historically, newspapers such as the Times and broadcasters such as the BBC were widely regarded as the trusted shapers of authoritative agendas and conventional wisdom. They embodied everything. As part of the general news process, authority, where basically the news looked as authority. And then what ends up happening is, we feel, or the article talks about, is that people end up, and we could see by the numbers, is that people end up thinking that news is not as, it leans one way or the other. So really, by looking at the chart, these lines right here, and also public trust in the news, can give us this answer of what? Analyze technological developments. It's not all about technological developments. Challenge the conventional view that news is a form of public knowledge. Maybe. Show a journalist frames of value influence the production of. It doesn't talk about, as you've gotten the gist of the article, it does not talk about specific journalist frames of value. Discuss the changes in perception of the news. I like that, perception of the news, because people are either trusting it or not trusting it and seeing if news leans one way or the other. Or challenge the conventional view that news is a form of public knowledge. Well, that's more of a broader term there. That's not going to work. So the answer for number 11 is going to be B. 12 and 13, we have a nice connector question. According to the passage, which expectation do traditional authorities now face? So what expectation do traditional authorities now face? They should be uninfluenced by commercial considerations. They should be committed to bringing about positive social change. They should be respectful of the difference between public and private knowledge, or they should be transparent about their beliefs and assumptions. So where does it talk about this expectation? For 13, for the sake of time, let's look at C, 33 to 38. 30, 31. As part of the general process of the transformation of authority, whereby there has been a reluctance to uncritically accept traditional sources of public knowledge, the demand has been for all authority to make explicit the frame of value, so make explicit the frames of value which determine their decisions. So here, ready? Process of transformation. Okay, this is how news is changing. We talk about the older news up here and the way it was viewed, and now we have the new way it is viewed. So this transformation. So now in this transformation, if you look at the question, the expectations now is that be explicit about the frames of value. So tell us why you are thinking a certain way. So if I look about this, uninfluenced doesn't talk about commercial considerations. Committed doesn't talk about positive social change. Respect all the difference between public and private knowledge. It doesn't talk about public and private knowledge. There we go. Be transparent about their beliefs. Transparent about their beliefs means be explicit about the frames of value which determine their decisions. Tell us how you are determining your decisions. By telling us, you are being transparent. the answer to number 12 is D, and the answer to number 13 is C. 14, as used in line 24, common most nearly means. So line 24. It is generally accepted that public knowledge should be authoritative, but there is not always common agreement. So common agreement. So basically, a multitude of, like, all people would not agree, right? All people. Common meaning all people. So let's say for common, I'm going to say all people. So if it's all people, familiar, ordinary, those are gone. Widespread or numerous, the best answer for this would be widespread, right? Common agreement. Everyone in agreement about it. It does not happen. So the answer for 14 is C. Widespread. 15. The authors most likely include the extended quotations in line 43 to 53 to what? Are we presenting? The authors most likely include the extended quotations. Sorry, I just was looking at that word extended again. Extended quotations in lines 43 to 53 to present contradictory examples, cite representative opinions, criticize typical viewpoints, or suggest alternatives. Okay. So let's go back to 43 and 53. But as I'm reading that, I have to understand what's happening here, right? Because they're setting the quote up. Not surprisingly, perhaps some news journalists feel uneasy about this renegotiation of theirs. So they're uneasy about this renegotiation of their authority. And it says, editors are increasingly casting a glance at the most read lists on their own and other websites, which used to know its place as being acts a kind of journalistic, that's a tough word, ombudsman ruling on our credibility. The result of democratizing access to achieving new political disengagement by the majority and a dumbing down through a popularity, it's important, a popularity contest of stories. So really what's happening is, instead of, being explicit about the frames of value, a lot of these news journalists are instead seeing, hey, what's popular? What are most people reading or clicking on? And those are the things that are going to be, shown on their news. So if I'm saying that they're feeling uneasy, now here they're showing me examples of why they're uneasy. Because they're looking at this, most read lists. And obviously the most read list is going to be the popularity, and popularity is going to get you more clicks on your website, more eyes viewing it. So they're showing me examples of why they feel uneasy. Give me an examples. So it's not an alternative. That makes no sense. Contradictory examples? Nope. They're not opposite. They're the same. Representative opinions or criticize. We're not criticizing. So they're citing these opinions, right? Representative opinions. They're giving us a kind of these examples of why, or these opinions of why they feel this way. They feel uneasy because, look, it's becoming a popularity contest. So for number 15, you are going to get B. Cite representative opinions. It's not the opposite. It's the same. Representative opinions. 16. The authors indicate that the public is coming to believe that journalists reports should avoid what? So what should they avoid? Personal judgment, too much information, quotations from authorities, or details that the subject wish to keep private. So details that they want to keep private. Now this is another connector which helps us. So as I go through this connector for 16 and 17, I'm going to look at 70 to 77. And when I look at 70 to 77, I'm looking for where the reporter should avoid something. So 70 to 77, where they should avoid something. There's a growing feeling, as expressed by several of our focus group participants, the news media should be informative rather than authoritative. The job of journalists should be to give the news as raw as it is without, okay, there it is, right? That's saying they should not do that, putting their slant on it. So their opinion. Don't put your opinion on it. So if we go back to from 17 to 16, what should they avoid? Their opinion. if I'm looking at their opinion, where do I see that? There we go. Personal judgments. That's their opinions. More information than is necessary. That's not stated. Quotations from authorities. That just doesn't make sense. I guess you want quotations from authorities. Details. Keep private. Nope. It's A. Reporters should avoid. Now, in 17, I find that, right, when I'm looking through the answers in 17, I find that because as I'm reading these lines, give the news as raw as it is without putting there. That's saying, that's what those words say, is that avoid doing this. Don't do this. And that's where I would get line. For 17, I get D, which would lead me to 16 getting A. 18. As used in line 74, raw most nearly means what? So we just read that, actually. The job of journalists should be to give the news as raw as it is without putting their slant on. So just tell us what's happening. Be real. Tell us what's happening. So really you're looking for like the realness of the news, exactly how it is. So if it's exactly how it is, inexperienced, harsh, exposed, all these are just out of context. It'd be unfiltered, right? Don't filter it by giving me your opinion. Don't filter it by not telling me everything. Give me the real story, unfiltered. 18A. 19. Based on the table, in which year were people the most trusting of news media? So we learned here, most trusting of news media. So if I look at that, I go to the chart. Which were they most trusting? So we're not going to deal with the bottom here. We're going to do the top. So news organizations, right, have inaccurate stories, don't know, or get the facts straight. Okay, so that would be, for question 19, most trusting. So, hey, we trust the news because they get the facts straight. So in all these years, 1985 is where most people felt the news organizations got the facts straight. They were trustworthy, 55%, 1985. So if I go down to question 19, I look at the years, and there I get A, 1985. 20, which statement is best supported by the information presented in this table? So for 20, you basically got to start narrowing this stuff down, okay? So let's narrow this down. So for 20, A says, between 1985 and 2011, the proportion of inaccurate news stories rose dramatically. So inaccurate news stories rose dramatically. Well, we're looking at people's opinions here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put A, B, C, D, so you can narrow down. Because I'm looking at my paper here, so I'll stay on the chart and narrow down. So which statement best supported by the information presented in the table? Between 1985 and 2011, the proportion of inaccurate news stories rose dramatically. Well, these are people's opinions, right? Seeing other news stories inaccurate or favoring one side. It's opinion. So we don't know exactly what those numbers are. I get rid of A. B, between 1992 and 2003, the proportion of people who believed that news organizations were biased almost doubled. So biased doubled. So if I go down here, I'm not seeing any doubling for anything, so I don't need B. B is not going to be right. C, between 2003 and 2007, people's views of the accuracy, independence, and fairness of news organizations changed very little. 3%, 3%, same, 1%, same. All right. Clearly that looks like it might be the answer, C, but let's look at D. Between 2007 and 2011, people's perception that news organizations are accurate increased. Well, that's false. It decreases. They trust the news less, so that's gone. So if we go back down to number 20, the answer is going to be C. Just narrowing them down, looking at the charts. 21. The 2011 data in the table best serves as evidence of what? So let's look at that 2011 data. Really, if we look at this, all these numbers, depending on the numbers going up. So if you look at this, right, so get the facts straight. less trust in the news. Do they have more inaccurate stories? Yes, way more. They don't know, then that's just someone who doesn't know. Are they independent? Nope. Are they influenced by powerful organizations? Yes. So if you just keep rolling down the line here, people don't trust the news. Don't trust. So if I go back down to question 21, if I look at all that data in 2011, overall, I see that people don't trust the news. If I look at these answers, where does it say where people don't trust? Well, look at the vocabulary word. Skepticism on the authority of these people. Okay? So they really don't trust the people writing the news or the people going on the news and giving their opinions. So the answer for number 21 would be C. Moving forward, we'll go into the next reading, another nonfiction story, and we'll get into questions 22 to 32. Okay, we're back. SAT practice test 6, reading sections, questions 22 through 32. Clearly, this is going to be your science reading, decoding a flower's message, written in 2012. So we like that. It's something that, as I always say, is written, not too long ago. So the language is going to be easier to understand. Let's dive right in. Question 22, the primary purpose of the passage. So primary purpose, main idea question. So are we discussing the assumptions and reasoning behind a theory? Describe the aim, method, and result of an experiment. Present and analyze conflicting data about a phenomenon. So conflicting data about a phenomenon. Or show the innovative nature of a procedure used in a study. Now, I'm going to tell you we're going to look at lines 17 to 20 for this one. So if we're looking at lines 17 through 20, it says, in one recent study, Nina Theus and Lynn Adler took on the specific problem of the Texas gourd, how to attract enough pollinators but not too many beetles. So it's a study. And if you get the gist, as we do, we get the gist of the reading first, what you're going to notice is that they're talking about an experiment that these two scientists partake in or create. So if we're looking at this, they're not talking about a theory, I can get rid of A. Also, they're not talking about conflicting data in a phenomenon. They're talking about an experiment. So I narrow it down to B and D, the aim, method, results of an experiment, or the innovative nature of a procedure used in a study. So if you compare these two, this is clearly what you can narrow this question down to. But if you do get the gist and read through, really what it is they have the experiment and they have the aim, what they're looking for, the method, how they set it up, and then the results of that experiment. So the best answer for 22 is going to be B. 23. As presented in the passage, Theus and Adler's research primarily relied on what type of evidence? So what type of evidence did it rely on? Direct observation, historical data, expert testimony, or random sampling? The lines we're going to look at for here are 33 to 34 and lines 61 to 64. But clearly, as we said with the first question, the second question, you can get a good feel of this in the gist, right? They're not talking specifically about other people or data in the past. They're doing an experiment. And if you're doing an experiment, what are you going to do? You're going to look at that direct observation. That's part of an experiment. But just to show the lines we're looking at to see how it confirms A, let's check it out. 33 to 34. 30, 31, 32, 30. To find out, she and Adler planted 168 Texas gourd vines in an Iowa field. So they did it themselves, right? They created that field to look at that direct observation. And then we have 61 to 64. As soon as they did, the team spent the next several hours walking from flower to flower, observing. They're literally walking from flower to flower, observing. So what does that mean? What are they doing? There's that direct observation. 24. Which statement about striped cucumber beetles can most reasonably be inferred from the passage? So when I look at where am I going to find this, it's not a connector question, so I have to find where I'm going to see this. Striped cucumber beetles sticks out. Okay, so I'm going to look at the parts in the passage where it talks about striped cucumber beetles. We are going to go to lines 9 through 12. You attract not just the good guys, but you also attract the bad guys. For a Texas gourd plant, striped cucumber beetles are among the very bad guys. So clearly we see that they're not good. It's negative. Now, as we go through this, what are we picking up about it? So if I see here, they're attracted to not just, so basically if you're looking at this, if you move forward earlier in the passage, and I would suggest reading, around the whole paragraph if you can read it fast enough. Texas gourd of a large flared blossom, sunrise. But when you advertise to pollinators, you advertise in an open communication network. So basically, it's scent that they're attracted. So really, what does it say? It says that the striped cucumber beetles are also attracted to that scent of the Texas gourd that other things are. And as you read the passage, you're going to realize it's other bees. So these bad guys are attracted to the same scent. So they feed primarily on Texas gourd plants. It does not say that. They are less attracted to this than the honeybees are. It's the exact opposite. That's wrong. They experience only minor negative effects as a result of that. That makes no sense because in the context, we're not talking about striped cucumber beetles. The answer for 24 is going to be D. They are attracted to the same compound in the Texas gourd scent that squash bees are. So it hits it on all angles. So the answer for 24 is going to be D. Moving forward, question 25. The author indicates that it seems initially plausible that Texas gourd plants could attract more pollinators if they what? So initially plausible that Texas gourd plants could attract more pollinators if they what? Did not have flowers that have a scent, targeted insects other than bees, increased their scent, or emitted more varied fragrance or varied scents. Okay. Now, if it's an initial plausible, right, that we're probably going to look at the beginning of the passage, and I'm going to say let's look at lines 26 and 27. So I go up to 26 and 27, still in the beginning of the passage, which is good. Now, that word intuition sticks out there for this question because it ties in with that word initial, right? Initially plausible. Intuition, meaning most people would think this. So if I'm looking for the answer, I see initially plausible, then I see intuition. That's a connection right there that I'm going to look for. Intuition suggests that more of that aroma should be even more appealing to bees. So have more of the scent. Okay? That sounds like it makes sense. So if you look here, more of the scent, there it is, increased floral scent. The answer for 25 is C. And I just want to say again, initially plausible, right? Where do I find that in the passage? I have to go back into the passage and I have to see a word that ties in with that. And there's that word intuition, and it ties into the question. Moving forward, question number 26. As used in line 38, treated most nearly means what? Let's go to line 38. I'm going to start up here. So August flowering season made half the plants more fragrant by tucking, I'm not even going to say this, treated swabs deep inside their flowers. Each treated flower emitted about 45 times more fragrance. So if I look up here, they made half the plants more fragrant by tucking these swabs, and the treated flower has the swab. So basically they were given something, right? They were given those swabs. That's what treated mean. The treated flowers were given something. So if they're given something, so I'll just say, given something. When they were giving something, that's also they're changed, right? Because they're going to emit more of a scent. And if they're changed, which one is changed here? Altered. There you go. 26 is going to be A. All right. 27 and 28, we get our first connector question. So what did Thies and Adler do as part of their study that most directly allowed Thies to reason that bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself? So they're repelled. So bees repelled by something other than the fragrance. Now, what I can do here is, because it's a connector, I'm going to go to 28. Look at these lines and see where it's going to prove that bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself. So I go back here and look. So for the sake of time, let's go to lines 45 and 50 and see where it shows us that the bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself. So 45 to 50. Here we go. So every half hour throughout the experiments, the team plucked all the beetles off of half the fragrance-enhanced flowers and half of the controlled flowers, allowing bees to respond to the blossoms with and without interference by the beetles. Now, let's look at this for a second. How does this show that the bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself? So what they're doing is they're changing the experiment. So every half hour, the team plucked all the beetles off of half the fragrance-enhanced flowers. They took the beetles off. So if they took the beetles off, it then allowed the beetle to make another chance. Like the beetle can go somewhere else, allowing beetles to respond to the blossoms with and without interference by beetles. So you're kind of giving the beetles a chance here. Okay? Now, how do I tie that in that the bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself? Let's look at line 70, 71. Thies thinks the bees were repelled not by the fragrance itself, but by the abundance of beetles. Okay, if I read this line, and this is important, it says that they were repelled not by the fragrance, but by the abundance of beetles. And then if I tie up here, I tie it in 45 to 50, allowing bees to respond to the blossoms with and without interference by beetles. So you can see that connection between this statement here and this statement here. Let's go back to the answers. This is a tough connector. So if we're choosing A here, let's break down 27. They observed the behavior of bees and beetles both before and after the flowers opened in the morning. So it's all about the flowers opening in the morning. They increased the presence of this compound during the August flowering season. I'm going to be honest with you, tying in those two phrases we found before, I do not see any of this type of information. They compared the gourds that developed from naturally pollinated flowers to the gourds that developed from hand-pollinated, naturally pollinated, or they gave bees a chance to choose between beetle-free enhanced flowers and beetle-free normal flowers. There you go. This makes perfect sense. So let's think about that again. You're reading that phrase, and it talks about that the bees needed to make a choice regardless of what beetles are there. Okay, once we saw that, you go in here, and 45 and 50 talks about that, and when it talks about that, it basically says it gives them a chance. So you're following a process. Step 1 tied into step 2, and then tied into step 3. 27, the answer is D. 28, the answer is A. 29. The primary function of the 7th and 8th paragraphs, lines 68 to 84, is to what? Are we summarizing, describing, illustrating, or explaining? And then their findings, hypotheses, methods, or reasoning. So this is a good way of breaking down each answer. So let's go to 65 to 84. What they saw was the double normal number. So what they saw. So you're kind of like they're showing what they learned in this experiment. What they saw, double the normal number of beetles on fragrance and flowers. To their surprise, did not prefer the highly scented flowers. So basically, this is how would I say it? This is like the ending of their experiment. This is what they see, right? These are their findings. Okay, it's talking about their findings from the experiment. And if you read all that, you'll clearly see it. And if I go to 29 and look here, are we describing their hypothesis? No, that's going to come early on. Illustrate their methods, that would be somewhere in the middle of the passage. Explain their reasoning. Maybe I could narrow this down to A and D, but clearly if you read that paragraph, the answer for 29 is going to be A. It summarizes their findings. Pretty straightforward. Moving forward, 30. In describing squash bees as indifferent, line 68, the author most likely means that they what? Could not distinguish enhanced flowers from normal flowers, visited enhanced flowers and normal flowers at an equal rate, largely preferred normal flowers to enhanced flowers, or were as likely to visit beetle-infested enhanced flowers to visit beetle-free enhanced flowers. Now, indifferent means like, they didn't care. They would just, there's no rhyme or reason. Let's look at line 68 and get more of an idea here. Squash bees were indifferent, and honeybees visit enhanced flowers less often than normal ones. Theus thinks the bees were repelled not by the fragrance. So what they saw was the double the normal number of bees on fragrance-enhanced blossoms, pollinators. Pollinators, to their surprise, did not prefer the highly scented flowers. Squash bees were indifferent, and honeybees visited flowers. So they're talking about the different bees, and it said that squash bees were indifferent. Now, if you're indifferent, you really they don't care which one they go to. It doesn't matter. So they were less likely to visit one than the other. That's wrong. When you're indifferent, you basically go to each one equally. Okay, they preferred one. Nope. They visited enhanced flower at an equal rate. Okay, that makes sense. Or they could not distinguish. Now, I could narrow this down to A and B because C and D are very specific about visiting one over the other, and that does not make sense. So I narrow this down to A and B. But remember, the SAT is black and white. There's no gray area. They would literally need to say that, you know what, these bees couldn't distinguish it. We don't know that. The bees probably can distinguish it, the scent. But you know what, though? It doesn't matter. They're indifferent. So they're going to visit each type of flower at an equal rate. They'll go to each one, and that's indifferent. It's funny, on some of the other practice tests, you see that word indifferent come up again, which is interesting. So it's a good word to know. 31 and 32, we get our connector question. According to the passage, Theus and Adler's research offers an answer to which of the following questions? So what does it answer? Okay. How Texas gourd plants increase the number of visits they receive from pollinators? Why is there an upper limit on the intensity of the aroma emitted by Texas gourd plants? Why does hand pollination rescue the fruit weight of beetle-infested Texas gourd plants? Why do Texas gourd plants stop producing fragrance attractive to pollinators when beetles are present? So Texas gourd plants stop producing. Okay. So we want to know the answer that was given here. So basically, if we're looking at here, we're going to need to see an answer to their findings, okay? So for, as I always say, time's sake, let's look at D, 85 to 86. Here we go. So they're answering the question, so it talks about those results, so I like that. Proved a reason that Texas gourd plants never evolved to produce a stronger scent, okay? So they never will have a stronger scent. If you really ramp up the odor, you don't get more pollinators, but you can really get ripped apart by your enemies. So what's interesting is that they're not going to have a stronger scent to attract more pollinators. So the stronger the scent, it does not attract more pollinators. Okay, so it's all about the scent, right? How much scent they give off. So if I look at this last question, once again, it's about scent, right? So let's look at this. How can Texas gourd increase the number of visits? No, it's not saying the increase in or how they can increase. It's just showing in regards to the scent, the amount of pollinators that go there. Let's look at D. Why do Texas gourd brands stop producing fragrance attractive to pollinators when beetles are present? Well, no, they don't stop fragrance when beetles are present. Just beetles are present when there is more fragrance. We don't talk, the reading does not talk about the stopping of fragrance producing. Why does hand pollination rescue the fruit weight of bee? That just doesn't make any sense. Well, there we go. I just really narrowed it down. Why is there an upper limit on the intensity of the aroma emitted by Texas gourd plants? And they proved that by saying that the more fragrance let out, it attracts more bad things. So the Texas gourd plant is trying to emit enough fragrance to stave off those beetles, but also get their pollinators. And if I go back, right, upper limit, if I go back to 85 and 86, where's that word that ties into upper limit? There we go. You're ramping up the odor. Produce a stronger scent. So those words that tie into that answer too. Moving forward, we'll get into the next reading, which is 33 through 42, your double passage. Okay, SAT practice test number 6. We are on questions 33 to 42. These are the double passage. So as I'm looking through this, first thing I'm noticing is written in 1838 and 1849. So older English, a little harder to understand, but above all, something we still got to go through. Now, when you're looking at the passage 1 and passage 2s and you're getting the gist, the first thing you're looking for is how does each author disagree with the other one? And it may be in a way, how do they agree with each other? That's what you're looking for in the gist when you go into a double passage. Let's get started. So 33 and 34, we get into a double passage. A connector question, which I like. So in passage 1, Lincoln contends that breaking the law has which consequence? So breaking the law, consequence. So it slows the repeal of bad laws, undermines and repudiates the nation's values, leads to mob rule, or creates divisions between social groups. So when you're going into the second half of this question, you're looking up here and thinking to yourself, which one of these sets of lines talks about, a consequence of breaking the law? Now, for time's sake, for 34, let's look at A, lines 9 through 12. I'm going to start. It says 9 through 12, right? But I always like to start where maybe a sentence begins. So as the patriots of 76 did to support the Declaration of Independence, so to the support of the Constitution and laws. Let every American pledge his life, his property, and his sacred honor. Let every man remember that to violate the law, there it is, right? There's that wording of breaking the law, is to trample on the blood of his father. So trample on the blood of his father, and to tear the character of his own. Tear the character of his own and his children's liberty. So what I'm noticing here is that, it talks about, through generations, right? Through generations, you're hurting, the nation. Not only, the nation of your father, yours, but of your children's. Okay? So it's a bad thing because it affects or violates, it says violate up here, your father's country, your country, and your children's future country. So does it talk about the repeal of bad laws? No, it does not. Does it create divisions between social groups? It does not talk about social groups. Narrow down to B and C. Rule by mob or repudiates the nation's values. Well, if it talks about dealing with your father's country, your children's country, your country, we're not talking about rule of mob here, where basically it's this madness happening. It is talking about repudiates the nation's values. That is going to be the closest answer. So for 33, you have B, and then for 34, you have A. 35, as used in line 24, urge most nearly means what? Let's go to line 24. When I so pressingly urge a strict observance of all the laws. So basically what he's saying here is that I urge strict observance. So if there's urging it, I want people to follow the laws. I want you to follow the laws. I want you to do it. So if I here for urge, I'm going to put want. I hope. So I look at these answers. Hasten just means to move something faster. That does not work. Stimulate does not work out of context. So when I urge them, does he require or advocate? So urge means hey, I hope you do this, right? I want you to do this. That is not a requirement. So the best answer for 35 for urge is going to be D, advocate. 36. The sentence in lines 24 to 28 primarily serves which function in passage 1? So when you read this sentence, what function does it serve in passage 1? It raises and refutes a potential counterargument. It identifies and concludes a shortcoming of Lincoln's argument, acknowledges and substantiates a central assumption of Lincoln's argument, or anticipates and corrects a possible misinterpretation. Let's look at this. Lines 24 to 28. When I so pressingly urge strict observance of all the laws, this is very important right here, let me not be understood as saying, okay, ready? Let me not be understood as saying there are no bad laws, nor that grievances may not arise for the redress of which. So let me not be understood as saying. So he's basically saying, like, don't think I'm saying this, okay? Don't think I'm saying this. So if I look at these words that I've underlined, the best way of saying of basically Lincoln saying don't get confused with what I'm saying, there's that word, misinterpretation, right? He's saying don't misunderstand me when I say ba 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 ba. So misinterpretation sticks out as the word there that helps you find that answer. He's not refuting a counter argument. I mean, I guess you could say that, but he's really saying with when he's saying, and I'm going to go back to 24 to 28, let me not be understood. What he's really saying is don't misunderstand me. There it is. Shortcoming, concedes. No, he doesn't concede anything. He doesn't give anything up. Acknowledges and substantiates a central assumption. No. Right here. It anticipates and corrects a possible misinterpretation. Let me not be understood as saying. That's basically saying, don't misunderstand me. 37. As used in line 32, observed most nearly means what? So line 32, observed. 30, 31, 32. So also in unprovided cases, if such arise, let proper legal provisions be made for them with the least possible delay. Okay? There's that word, observed. Let's read it again. But I do mean to say that although bad laws, if they exist, should be repealed as soon as possible. So basically, I know bad laws are there, and let's get rid of them. Still, though, continue in force for the sake of example. They should be religiously observed. Observe those laws religiously. So if you're observing those laws, you're not watching them, what are you doing? He's saying you must follow those laws. Oops, sorry about that. Observed, meaning followed. So he's saying is there are bad laws out there and they should be repealed. However, while they are actual laws, you still need to follow them. Religiously observed. Notice that doesn't make any sense. Contemplated, you're not thinking about whether you should be saying, hey, no, you need to observe them, follow them. Scrutinized. He is saying you can scrutinize them, saying like, hey, if they're wrong, you need to get rid of them. But in the sense of using the word observed, what he means is that you need to follow them. 37, the answer is A. 38 and 39, another connector question. In passage 2, Thoreau indicates that some unjust aspects of governments are what? So unjust aspects of government are superficial, subtle, self-correcting, or inevitable. Important words here. When I go to 39 and look at these lines, I'm going to see where Thoreau talks about unjust laws. So let's look. For the sake of time, let's look at lines 58 through 59. If the injustice, well, there we go, right? He talks about unjust aspects of laws. If the injustice is part of the necessary friction of the machine of the government, let it go. Let it go. Perchance it will wear smooth. So what he's saying here is that if there is an injustice, right, some unjust aspects of government, so the injustice, unjust aspect of government, so I can see that this is going to be the line that I'm looking at because it's mentioning those words from the question. Well, what should we do, right? Let it go. Let it go. Perhaps it will wear smooth. Certainly the machine will wear out. So basically it's like just kind of, it's going to happen, and just go through it, and it'll eventually go away. So if I go here, sometimes I like to write down the words that help me answer it. So, you're going to say deal with it. He says it happens. So deal with it, it happens, and then eventually it will go away. So superficial, fixed easily. Superficial means, like, in context, it doesn't mean here. Doesn't work here. Studied carefully, doesn't say anything about that. Self-correcting and may be beneficial, does not talk about any benefits of that. Inevitable and should be endured. Basically, let it go, right? It's necessary. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. However, just deal with it, endure it, and eventually it'll go away. So for 38, we are going to get D, and then 39, we have C. Moving into the last three questions. The primary purpose of each passage is to what? Make an argument about the difference between legal duties and moral imperatives. Discuss how laws ought to be enacted and changed in a democracy. Advance a view regarding whether individuals should follow all of the country's laws, or articulate standards by which laws can be evaluated as just or unjust. So I'm going to look at lines 30 to 32 here, and then 64 to 66. So 30 to 32. This is talking about getting rid of laws, okay, and that even if you don't like the law, you have to follow it. So you don't like the law, you have to follow it. 64 to 66, now we're in Thoreau's. But if it is of such a nature that requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say break the law. So basically it's about following laws. Should you break it or just go through it? I look through here. Very, very important word there. Should we follow the laws? Thoreau says you have the right to break them, where Lincoln says you have to follow them no matter what. So I'm pretty sure the answer 40 is going to be C. Let's look at the other ones. Legal and moral imperatives does not talk about that. How laws to be enacted and changed. They mention change, but really it's about a person following it, or a society following it. And we really don't talk about enacting any laws. Articulate standards by which laws can be evaluated as just or unjust. We never talk about standards here. So the answer to 40 is going to be C. 41. Based on the passages, Lincoln would most likely describe the behavior that Thoreau recommends in lines 64 to 66. Now let's go back and look at 64 and 66. It talks about that basically you should break the law. Now clearly, we know through our other reading is that you should not break the law. So how would Lincoln describe this? So isn't an excusable reaction to an intolerable situation? Well, Lincoln always says never break the law. We've read about that earlier, so I can get rid of A. A misapplication of a core principle of the Constitution, an honorable response to an unjust law. I'm going to get rid of C because Lincoln says never break the law, right? So I have it narrowed between B and D. So what would Lincoln describe that behavior as? A rejection of the country's proper forms of remedy, or a misapplication of a core principle of the Constitution? Now let's think back to where Lincoln talks about right here, where he goes, listen, there are bad laws, but you need to follow them and then change them. Do it the right way. Follow the rules. So if I go back here, which one is it talking about kind of following the rules? Well, the country's proper forms. Those are the rules. Basically, there are unjust laws. You can get rid of them, but do it the right way. And while that law is in the books, follow it. He does not get into, the core principles of the Constitution and how those relate to laws, especially in this context of this question. So the answer to 41 is going to be B. Now let's remember, the double passages are hard. And the big thing is you want to get the big idea of how each author disagrees with each other. And if you can figure it out, how they might actually agree with each other in a smaller way. Based on the passages, one commonality, so just like what I spoke about, right? One similarity in the stances Lincoln and Thoreau take towards abolitionism is what? Both authors see the cause as warranting drastic action. Both authors view the cause as central to their argument. Neither author expects the cause to win widespread acceptance. Neither author embraces the cause as his own. We are going to look at lines 37 to 39 and then 79 to 82. Why these lines? Because they mention abolitionism here, and that's why I'm going to choose those lines, and that's why I find them. 37 to 39. We have abolitionism. There is no grievance that is a fit object of redress by mob law. In any case that arises, as for instance, the promulgation of abolitionism, one of two positions is necessarily true. So look, Lincoln goes, one of two positions is true. So does he take a position? He does not. He doesn't give his opinion. So Lincoln, and I'm just going to put, no opinion. Okay, let's look at Thoreau, 79 to 82, where they mention abolitionism. I do not hesitate to say that those who call themselves abolitionists, so look, those who call themselves abolitionists should at once effectually withdraw their support. So those who call themselves abolitionists. So he does, once again, he also doesn't like take a side. He just says, hey, those who call themselves abolitionists should do this. So warranting drastic action? No. Central to their own arguments? The exact opposite. They both don't give their opinion. Cause to win widespread acceptance? No. Neither author embraces the cause as his own. They don't give their opinion. The answer to 42 is D. Moving forward, we'll get into the last reading section, questions 43 to 52. On to the last reading section of SAT Practice Test 6, questions 43 to 52. What tech is next for the solar industry? 2013 science passage. Like it. Like that it's made in 2013. Easy to understand. Looking at my charts, once again, I always say to myself, what's going up, what's going down, double check those things. And seeing here, like we're starting up top, going down, years going up. Just be aware of that stuff as you look at any chart that you go through when you start start answering your questions, especially for the non-fiction passages. Let's get rolling. 43. The passage is written from the point of view of a what? A consumer, a scientist, a journalist, or a hobbyist. Let's look at lines 10 through 17. Looking at lines 10 through 17. So, I guess I would even start up here where it talks about solar panels, people using them. The technology that surprised almost everyone is conventional crystalline silicone. A few years ago, that they never go below $1 a watt. Now it's down to something like 50 cents a watt, and there's talking of it hitting 36 cents per watt. So what's interesting is, it's talking about it going down in pricing, right? And if you're talking about pricing, okay, you're and looking at if I like I said, I'm going to go a little further higher here, but Martin Green, professor, is one of the leading sellers. So it talks about the pricing, then it talks about the goals, then it talks about ways that these companies are improving the solar industry or solar panels, right? Then it talks about these things in the future about what is going to make it overall, right? 20% more electricity. So it's all about how is it getting cheaper and better, right? So the changes, and clearly that sticks out there. But let's look at it. A point of view of a consumer evaluating a variety of options. It doesn't talk about different options. It talks about the field getting better. A scientist comparing competing research methods. As you read through it, you're not going to see research methods. Once again, by reading the passage and getting the gist, you'll get a feel for what's being spoken about here. A journalist enumerating changes in a field. Well, yeah, changes. The material is getting better and the prices are getting lower. I like it. A hobbyist explaining the capabilities of new technology. Though it mentions the capabilities, it's really not in terms of a hobbyist. It's an academic article, most likely a journalist or a scientist writing it. And it doesn't talk just about the capabilities. It talks about, also the pricing going down, things like that. So for 43, we're going to go with C. 44, as used in line 4, poor most nearly means what? Going up, line 4, poor. Solar panel installations continue to grow quickly, but the solar panel manufacturing industry is in the doldrums because supply far exceeds demand. The poor market. So if supply exceeds demand, the poor market, meaning that like people aren't buying it. It's not that good. It's low. Weak, humble, pitiable, obsolete. So humble and pitiable don't work out of context. So is it a weak market or an obsolete market? Obsolete means it'll never work. It's old and just out of date. Well, solar panels are not old or out of date. It's a weak market. People aren't buying them yet. Okay, so for 44, you're going to go with A, because weak is a better answer than obsolete, because solar panels are not obsolete. People are still using them or are going to use them. 45 and 46, connector question. It can most easily be inferred from the passage that many people in the solar panel industry believe what? So solar panel industry, what do they believe? Consumers don't understand how the panels work. Two-sided cells have weaknesses that have not been discovered. The cost of panels is too high and their power output is too low. Willow glass is too inefficient to be marketable. Now, remember, many people, and so what you're doing is you're looking for people in the industry, right? You're going to these choices and looking where it talks about people within the industry and what someone thinks about what they think. Let's use D, 27 to 30. Here we go. Industry. All parts of the silicon solar panel industry, that gives me a hint, right, have been looking for ways to cut costs and improve the power output, and that's led to a steady cost reduction. Green points to something as mundane as the pasties used to screen print some of the features on solar panels. So basically it's talking about cutting costs, right? So if the industry is looking for ways to cut costs and improve power output, what does it mean? It means they think what? So I chose D. They don't understand how power, like consumers don't understand? No. That two-sided cells have weaknesses? Doesn't talk about it. That the cost of panels is too high and their power output is too low. There it is. It hits on the 2 points we just read, that they're trying to lower cost and raise the power output. Boom. 45 is going to be C. We don't even talk about that. So 45 is C and 46 is going to be D. 47 and 48, another connector question. According to the passage, two-sided solar panels will likely raise efficiency by what? Requiring little energy to operate, absorbing reflected light, being reasonably inexpensive to manufacture, or preventing light from reaching the ground. So when I'm looking at these lines, I'm looking at the lines that talk about your two-sided solar panels. And let's go to B, lines 61 and 62. The light that reflects. Okay, so here we see the two-sided solar cell being mentioned. Okay, and if I look at that, they want to know likely raise efficiency. So as I move down, okay, I'm going to look for where it says something about efficiency or them working better. The basic idea isn't new. Doesn't talk about that. The light doesn't talk about, any type of efficiency here. The light reflects onto the back of the panels and could be harvested to increase the power output. This works particularly well when the solar panels are built on sand, which is highly reflective. Let's move up a little bit. That light reflects onto the back of the panels and could be harvested. So basically they're talking about using reflective light. They use the word reflect twice here. I go back into the question. There it is. We're talking about reflection. You could basically use that one word to answer it. Little energy to operate does not talk about that. Inexpensive does not talk about the pricing. Prevent light from reaching ground. That's the exact opposite, right? They want it to hit the ground and come back up to reflect. 47 is B, and 48 is B as well. 49, as used in line 69, betting on most nearly means what? So let's go to that line. Even longer term, green is betting on silicon, aiming to take advantage of the huge reductions in cost already seen. So if you're betting on it, you think that's going to work. So if you think something is going to work, you're what? Dabbling? No. If you think it's going to work, you're not going to dabble. You're going to go all in. Gambling with, switching from, or optimistic. So let's look at this. Switching from something else that does not work. If they're betting on, like, hey, I think this is going to work. This might work. Between B and D, having optimism is the best choice there. You think it'll work. You are optimistic about it. 49, the answer is D. 50, the last sentence of the passage mainly serves to what? Are we expressing concern about the limitations, identify a hurdle, make a prediction, or introduce a new area of study? Let's look at line 50. Excuse me, not line, it's question 50. Let's look at the last sentence of the passage. The challenge is to produce good connections between these semiconductors, something made challenging by the arrangement of silicon atoms in crystalline silicon. So it's a challenge. And so if I'm looking at the answer that talks about a challenge, concern about the limitations, identify a hurdle, make a prediction about the effectiveness, that doesn't work. Introduce a potential new area of study, that doesn't work either. So are we expressing concerns about the limitations or identify a hurdle that must be overcome? So if it's something they have to fix, if it's a challenge, what is it? It's a hurdle that they got to overcome, something they're going to work through. It's not about the limitations, it's about how stuff works. So the best answer for 50 is going to be B, identify a hurdle that must be overcome. 51, according to Figure 1 in 2017, the cost of which of the following fuels is projected to be closest to the 2009 average electricity cost shown in Figure 2. All right, let's look at this. So in 2009, the U.S. average electricity cost is $120. Now, if I look here, what's the closest to around 120? So 100, that'll be 125. Move down a little bit. There it is, right here. Advanced nuclear. Look at my choices. My choices, I look here, and there you have D. Advanced nuclear is your answer. Just comparing those two charts. According to Figure 2, in what year is the average cost of solar photovoltaic, or using the word voltage there? I'm just going to say solar voltaic. Who cares? The solar voltaic power projected to be equal to the 2009 average electricity cost. So once again, 2009 average electricity cost is $120. What year would that be? We move down. That's it. What year? Roughly around 2020. Look at my answers. There's your answer. B, 2020. So that gets you through the reading section for SAT Practice Test 6. We will now move into the grammar section. SAT Practice Test 6, Section 2, the writing and language section, or as I like to call it, the grammar section. Remember, same type of questions asked over and over again as you've gone through the other grammar sections. Also, we're still narrowing down to 2 and getting a feel for what sounds wrong, right? If it sounds wrong, it's gone. Redundancy. We're looking for singular, plural, tense, things like that. You are always on the lookout for. Let's get started. So, a necessary resource for science. In the winter of 1968, scientists David S. and Greg B. poured nitrates and phosphates into Lake 227, this is one of the 58 freshwaters. So, let's think here. The first thing we talk about on these questions is that you don't need extra words, right? So if I read it like Greg B. poured nitrates and phosphates into Lake 227, this is one of the, period, which is one, or period, one, or comma, one. Now, I don't necessarily need a period here because I can work off of a comma. so I can narrow it down to A and D. Then I could say Greg B. poured nitrates and phosphates into Lake 227, one of the 58 freshwater bodies. This is one of the 58 freshwater bodies. I don't need those extra words. The answer to number 1 is D. Number 2. While deliberately adding chemical compounds to a lake may seem destructive and irresponsible, this method of experimenting is sometimes the most effective. All right, let's sound this out. That first one sounded okay. I'm going to keep it. While deliberately adding chemical compounds to a lake may seem destructive and irresponsible, this method, like just commas there, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that. Destructive and comma irresponsible comma this method, nope. Destructive and irresponsible, this method, 2 commas there. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Destructive and irresponsible, this method, comma, that's wrong comma placement there. So really the first one I read, may seem destructive and irresponsible, comma, this method, it works. All others, when you kind of sound them out, they don't make any sense. The answer to number 2 is A. Number 3. S and B, I'm not going to say their names because I'm going to butcher them. So S and B were investigating possible causes for the large blooms of blue-green algae or cyanobacteria that had been affecting bodies of water such as Lake Erie. So 3 says, which choice most effectively combines the underlined sentence? Now let's think of this. Let's get rid of unnecessary words and let's have proper comma use. All the answers begin with in addition to. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, okay, still the same for all those answers. Unsightly, these algal blooms may cause oxygen depletion. These algae may cause depletion. Now, cause oxygen depletion. Now, what we're seeing is the beginning of all of these answers is the same. And then what I have is a period. Oxygen depletion kills fish and other wildlife in the lakes. Here I have a colon, the result being that it kills fish and other wildlife in the lakes. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algae blooms cause oxygen depletion. Semicolon. The algae bloom cause oxygen depletion that kills. So see how I mentioned it says algae blooms oxygen depletion twice here. Don't need that. I can get rid of that answer quickly. That's just redundancy. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algae blooms cause oxygen depletion and oxygen depletion caused by that. See? Same thing twice. So I narrow it down to A and D. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, comma, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion, which kills fish and other wildlife. So here I have the only difference is I have a colon and I have a comma. And when in doubt, we're always going to go with a comma. So we're going to choose D for number 3. Number 4. Just weeks after the scientists added the nitrates and phosphates, the water in Lake 227 turned bright green. Period. It was thick with semicolon. Colon. That doesn't make sense. I don't like that. Secondly, for number 4, I'm not going to choose C because I don't see another M dash or hyphen. So I'm going to get rid of C. So my only other 2 choices are green, it was thick with, or green, comma, it was thick with. So first of all, the grammar can narrow down the choices. Also, we're introducing that clause. So it would say it was thick with the same type of algal blooms that had plagued Lake Erie, because we're talking about the lake, we're talking about the same thing. The best answer here would be that colon. Okay, so the answer to 4 is going to be B, because the colon is needed as it introduces the independent clause. It was thick with the same type of algal blooms that had plagued Lake Erie. Moving forward, number 5. Which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph to this one? So the previous paragraph talked about it was thick with the same algal blooms that had plagued Lake Erie. Then it said one mission of the experimental lakes area is to conduct research that help people better understand threats to the environment. So the previous paragraph describes the experiment in Lake 227, and then this paragraph, as you will read it, talks about an experiment in Lake 226. So if I'm looking at this, I see another experiment mentioned here. I look up at 5. The experimental lakes area is located in a sparsely. That does not talk about the new experiment they're going into, so I can get rid of A and B. C I like because it talks about this other experiment they do at Lake 226. The process, that's just off context. Number 5 is going to be C because it's introducing the new experiment they do at Lake 226. Question 6. They added phosphates, nitrates, and a source of carbon. In the other, they added just nitrates and a source of carbon was added. Now, we want to be very concise with our answers. We don't need to say it was added because we know that already. That's implied. I get rid of that. And a source of carbon plus also a source of carbon. That just sounds weird, but also adding that sounds weird as well. The answer number 6 is B, most concise choice. 7. The experiment confirmed their suspicions when the half of the lake containing the phosphates was teeming. Remember, we're talking about a singular past tense verb, was teeming. It agrees with the subject, half of the lake, right? So it's half of it was teeming. So if I look at this, we can sound the answers out as well. Of the lake containing phosphate teems, no, past tense. So I know it's going to be was, right? Worked. So I can get rid of are and teams. I have A and B, was and were, but singular past tense verb was teeming agrees with the singular subject, half of the lake. Like, I know half might seem like it's plural, but it's not. It's like that one half. It's singular. So for 7, I'm going to go with A, was teeming. Moving forward. S and B's findings were shown off by the Journal of Science. So let's think about it. If you're putting something into an academic journal, right, your findings, are you putting it in the spotlight of, published in, put into, or shown off? Shown off makes no sense. Put in the spotlight makes no sense. What do you do with things in journals? You publish them in journals. The answer to number 8 is going to be C. Number 9. This is a same different question. What's being set up here, is it same or different underneath here? Is it an example? Are they showing a similar something? However, is it an opposite or subsequently? Like, is this an effect of what's going on? Let's look at it. S&B's findings were shown off by the Journal of Science. The research demonstrated a clear correlation between introducing phosphates and the growth of blue-green algae. Blank. Legislation in Canada passed laws banning phosphates in laundry detergent. So because of this, then they passed laws. So they saw the damage done, and then they did something about it. So it's not another example. It's not a similarity. It's not an opposite. It's subsequently. They did something about it. Subsequently, they passed those laws. Number 10. So right here. At this point, the writer wants to add a second policy outcome of the research described. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? So really what you want to do is choose an answer that talks about another policy, okay? So Lake 226 continued to develop blooms of blue-green algae. Nope, doesn't talk about policy. In the United States, many individual states have also adopted legislation to eliminate theirs policy. In 1974, S initiated a study of the effects. That's just a study of the effects. And then we're talking about aerial shots. Nope, we're talking about policy. The answer for 10 would be B, because it's legislation to eliminate. Moving forward, 11. Experiments like these can help people understand the unintended consequences of using certain household products. So which choice most effectively anticipates and addresses a relevant counter-argument to the argument? So what's the counter-argument? Of course, regulating the use of certain chemical compounds can be a controversial issue. Well, that's not controversial if you're regulating chemical compounds, right? Sometimes they're not going to be worth it. They're not going to be healthy. We can't use it. Many companies now offer phosphate-free alternative for household cleaning products. That's not offering a counter-argument or, anticipating a problem. Obviously, scientists should not be allowed to randomly perform experiments on just any body of water. Okay, there's something there, right? That's an argument against their experiments. Like, you can't just choose a lake and dump all this stuff in there. Phosphates are sometimes used in agriculture fertilizers in addition to being used in cleaning products. That's wrong. We don't need that there. The only one that really shows an counter-argument of like someone saying, hey, it's wrong what you did, would be you can't just perform experiments on any lake. The answer to number 11 is C. 12. Italy's Tower of Pisa. So we're actually in the next reading now. Italy's Tower of Pisa has been leaning southward since the initial stages of its. So the proper use of stages and its. So it is construction. It's not going to be this. You really don't need a comma there. It just doesn't, contextually, it doesn't work anywhere. So the answer number 12 is going to be D. Construction over 800 years. Indeed, if the tower's construction had not taken 2 centuries. So we have another same different question, right? So which one, right, elaborates on the fact of the previous sentence? So Italy's Tower of Pisa has been leaning southward since the initial stages of the construction over 800 years. So they've been constructing this thing for 800 years. Therefore, if the tower's construction had not taken 2 centuries and involved significant breaks due to civil war, so therefore really doesn't work because it's not like this happened, therefore this happened. There's not really a cause and effect. Nevertheless, there has not taken breaks due to okay, we can keep that one. Italy's Tower of Pisa is leaning southward since the initial stages of its construction over 800 years ago. Indeed, if the tower's construction had not taken 2 centuries and involved significant breaks due to civil war, the tower would have likely collapsed before it was completed. So interesting. So they're saying because it took so long, it has not collapsed, right? So we're elaborating on this previous fact right here. So it's not going to be an opposite. So nevertheless is an opposite word. That's not going to work. These 2 sentences are connected. So indeed, right? It's taken 800 years. Indeed, if they took longer, it would have fallen. 13, you have A. 14. Luckily, the tower survived, and its tilt has made it an Italian icon, comma, it attracts visitors, or an icon, attracting, icon, semicolon, attracting. So, of course, we're going to go with the comma. We like going with commas. And attracting, it's less words, right? I don't need it's attracting or it attracts. So, as I narrow down, I get my answer to 14 as B. Italian icon, attracting visitors from all over who flock to Pisa to see one of the greatest architectural weirdnesses in the world. I don't even know if that's a word. Deviations, oddities, abnormalities. So deviations, that's like a change in something. That doesn't work. So I've narrowed it down to oddities or abnormalities. Now, you have to use the best choice of words here. If you're looking at it, it's an odd thing. It's not like an abnormality in the sense of it's just weird, right? It's bending over. It hasn't fallen. You're going to choose oddities. Okay, it's the best choice of words. Now, I understand that narrowing these 2 down, I get it. It's close. However, oddities, it's weird, right? The greatest architectural oddities in the world, not abnormalities. Then you would, if it's abnormalities, they would compare it to something else in here. They're not doing that. So 15 is C, oddities, but at the same time, I understand how D could possibly be, one of the answers you want to go with. 16. Right here. At this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence. Unfortunately, the tower's tilt has steadily increased over the centuries, placing the structure in danger of collapse. Should the writer make the addition here? So let me say this. Easy way to narrow it down. Yes, yes, no, no. It's a pretty 50-50 choice in regards to all the practice tests, if it does happen a lot where you add the sentence or you get rid of it. So you do not have to think that one is gonna happen more than the other. Like, don't add this or add this. It's pretty even. So let's look at this. So it talks about that it attracts people all over to see one of the weirdest oddities in the world. And then it talks about the tilt, how much it's tilt. So how much it's tilted. Unfortunately, the tower's tilt has steadily increased over the centuries, placing the structure in danger of collapse. By the late 20th century, the angle of the tower's tilt had reached an astonishing 5.5 degrees. So if I look at this, like, yeah, and if you're going to choose no here, the answer is going to be way off base, most likely. This is not off base. So if I'm going to do it, yeah, I'm going to keep it. Make that addition. Why? Does it restate something, or does it establish a shift in emphasis? It establishes a shift in emphasis because the next sentence talks about how much it has tilted over the years. So 16, you are going to put B. 17. Astonishing 5.5 degrees. In 1990, Italy's government closed. So in 1990, comma, Italy's government closed the tower to visitors. So if I look at this, okay, B, in 1990, comma, Italy's government closed, comma, in 1990, if I get rid of this, closed, no, it doesn't work. If I have two commas here, I get rid of what's in between. That does not flow. In 1990, Italy's government, comma, closed, comma, doesn't make sense. Then I have a colon there. Italy's government closed. The colon is not a correct use of the colon. I'm going to choose A for 17 because it's the proper use of a comma. Reached an astonishing 5.5 degrees. Semicolon. In 1990, comma, Italy's government closed. And it flows well as well. Okay, so 17, you are going to get A. 18. The committee was charged with saving the tower without ruining its aesthetic, which no one had yet managed to achieve. Which choice best supports the main idea of the paragraph? Okay, so without ruining its aesthetic, so the way it looks, right? Had no one else achieved something like that? Well, what's cool about the tower? The aesthetic about it. It's its tilt, right? That's why everyone wants to see it. So what no one had yet managed to achieve doesn't make sense. Although not everyone on the committee agreed completely about what the aesthetic was. No, they all agreed with the aesthetic is that it tilts. It's cool. That's why people like it. White marble finish? No. There's where I mentioned the tilt. Preserving the tilt. The answer to 18 is C. That's the aesthetic. That's what everyone likes. They like the tilt. Remember, as I'm going through these, I'm narrowing them down. I'm seeing what works, sounding them out. Enter committee member John Burland. He is a geotechnical engineer. We don't need that there. Enter committee member John Burland, a geotechnical engineer. So it flows and works without any extra wording. Remember, you don't need a lot of wording. So these are all extra words. I can get rid of that. The answer to 19 is D. Least amount of words. Do not need extra words. Burland began a years-long process of drilling out small amounts of soil from under the tower. That took several years to complete. What am I going to choose here? So this is a redundancy question. Burland began a years-long process. So I don't need to mention years again. I've already mentioned it. So we're not going to keep no change. Taking several years, took him several years. Don't need that because it's redundant. The answer to 20 is D. We already said a years-long process, so always avoid that redundancy. By 2001, almost 77 tons of soil had been removed, and the tower's tilt had decreased by over 1.5 degrees. The ugly iron weights were removed, and the tower was reopened to visitors. Burland advocated using soil extraction, removing small amounts of soil. Now remember, this is past tense, okay? He already did it. How'd he do it? Removing small amounts of soil. So we can get rid of advocating for number 21. Let's sound all these out. Advocated using soil extraction. Burland advocated to use soil extraction. Burland advocated the using of soil extraction. So let's look at this. When in doubt, what makes sense with the least amount of words? Burland advocated using soil extraction. There you go. Burland advocated to use the using of. I don't need those extra words there. So the answer for 21 is A. 22. To make this paragraph most logical, sentence 5 should be where? So sentence 5 is going to be right here. Burland advocated using this soil extraction. Now, where should that go? Well, that should go where it talks about how he did it. So sentence 2 says a years-long process of drilling out small amounts of soil. So before sentence 2, right, it should talk about what he advocated, what he suggested they do. So that's why this would make sense after sentence 1, right? He comes in, he says, hey, I'm going to save the tower. How am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to advocate for soil extraction. Okay, next sentence. He began the years-long process of drilling out small amounts of soil. See, it flows better. Sentence 5 introduces using that gravity. Sentences 2, 3, and 4 explain the process. So the answer for 22 is going to be A. Okay, moving forward, we'll get into the second part of this grammar section, going into questions 23 all the way to the end of the test. Moving forward with SAT practice test number 6, we are at question 23. The reading is, I'm going to cover questions 23 to 33. The physician assistant will now see you. So 23, which choice is the best introduction to the paragraph? So if you have done this test already and you're reading, you will see that the paragraph is about the shortage of physicians. So the term paramedics refers to healthcare workers who provide routine and clinical services. For many Americans, finding a physician is likely to become a growing challenge. There it is. It's likely to become a growing challenge. What that means is that there is a shortage, right? Finding a physician is going to be hard. There's a shortage of physicians. So getting treatment for illness usually requires seeing a general practitioner, and that doesn't talk about shortages. Worldwide, the costs of healthcare are increasing at an alarming rate. That does not talk about the shortage of physicians. The answer to number 23 is going to be B. Remember, as you're going through the paragraph, you're reading it, and then you are choosing a word in the answer so that you can narrow it down. And that word or words here is a growing challenge. 24. I'm going to start right here. While the pressures of an aging population, insurance reforms, and health epidemics have increased demand for care, the supply of physicians is not expected to keep pace. Now, what we want to do is like as this stuff increases, right, we want the amount of doctors to increase. So what does that mean? You're kind of keeping up with it, right? So are you keeping pace, maintain the tempo, get in line, or move along? So the proper phrase to say that the supply of doctors can't keep up is that they can't keep pace. Move along contextually doesn't make sense. Get in line contextually doesn't make sense. Maintain the tempo. That word tempo is just off topic here. It does not fit into the kind of feel of this paragraph. So your best choice out of all these for 24 is going to be A. Keep pace, right? As the increase the increase in healthcare demand goes up, so it's increasing. So does the need for doctors, so it's keeping pace. 25. A 2009 report by the Bureau of Health Professions notes that although a fifth of the U.S. population lives in rural areas, less than a tenth of U.S. physicians serves that population because a traditional response to the crisis, amping up medical college enrollment. So they want more enrollments in college so that more doctors get certified and move up. So what does it mean by that? If you want to get those enrollments up, right? So if we're talking about, we would just say, get enrollments up. Are you amping them up, bolstering, arousing, or revving up? Revving up contextually doesn't make sense. Amping up, that's just not as academic of an answer as you'd want to see. So bolstering or arousing, well, if you want to get something up quickly, you are bolstering enrollments. Arousing contextually doesn't make sense here either. A lot of times with some of these questions, you can also sound it out. Use the words in the sentence and put them in and out, and you will see that you will be able to get rid of some of the choices pretty quickly. 26. At this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence. Several factors argue in favor of such an expanded role. Remember, when we're talking about this yes, yes, no, no, it's 50-50 which way you go. So by virtue of their medical training, PAs can perform many of the jobs traditionally done by doctors. So if we talk about PAs, physician assistants, being needed, okay, so several factors argue in favor of such a role. So if we read after where this sentence would put in, it talks about these good things that they can do, right? They have an expanded role. So several factors argue in favor of such an expanded role. Well, down here it talks about the good things that they can do. So should the writer make this addition? Yes, they should. Now, why? Introduces a counter argument, or because it frames the points the paragraph will examine? Well, clearly as we go down, it gives the points, right? Why they're in favor, not a counter argument. That doesn't work. So the answer to 26 is going to be B. And you will see, as you see, how I kind of break that down and look at the answers. By virtue of their medical training, well, whose medical training? It's their medical training. They are, his or her, and there are all off base. You have that I, whose medical training is it? It is their medical training. 27 is C. 28, including treating chronic and acute conditions, performing minor surgeries, and then we have a a colon here. Remember, when in doubt, we always go with a comma. Let's look at some of these answers and get rid of them because they just don't make any sense. C doesn't make any sense. I'm looking at that colon, that semicolon, then a comma and. Now, comma and is going to be the best choice here. Let me say again, about 70% of the time, the answer is neither a semicolon or a colon. It's always going to be a comma. If the comma works, put it in. Choose it. Also, the colon and semicolon, just know the differences. So colon, semicolon, colon, two of the same. Okay, so they're two of the same. They need each other. Dependent clause, dependent clause. Semicolon, two opposites. They don't need each other. Independent clause, independent clause. But a good rule of thumb is always go with the comma, and that's 28. 29. However, although well compensated earning in 2012, so as I'm reading that, I can definitely see that that's just kind of like a run-on right there. I need something there that's going to help me say that information in a proper way. So I'm going to get rid of A. If I go back up, it says, however, although well compensated, earning in 2012, earning in 2012. Okay, this is a tough one. First of all, I see this colon here and then a comma after that. That's probably not going to work. I have it narrowed down to B and C. Now, I have, although compensated, comma, earning in 2012 a median annual salary of $90,930. PAs. So see, I need a break here after I talk about 90,930. I can't just have nothing after that. It wouldn't make sense. There's nothing here, so I can get rid of that. So by virtue of process of elimination, I get 29 as the answer is B. It's the only answer that encloses the information correctly. Moreover, the training period for PAs is markedly shorter than those for physicians. Okay, now, this training period, that is singular. It is a training. It is a singular period of time. So that being said, your answer is going to be that. Okay, it's not going to be those. So I can get rid of A. Then physicians is shorter than physicians. So if we delete that underline, PAs is markedly shorter than physicians. Well, you need something there because, moreover, the training period for PAs is markedly shorter than physicians. Doesn't make sense. So I need something there. So I have that compared with, or that for. I'm going to go with the shorter of the two. Remember, we don't like, we always go with the answer with the least amount of words. So for 30, I'm going to go with C. 31. A recent review of the scholarly literature by Texas researchers found that PAs lend cost-efficient, widely appreciated services in underserved areas. In addition, rural-based PAs often provide... Okay, so this is a same different. What's being said up here, how does it tie in with what's being said up here? And this is that word that, or the group of words that ties that in. So up here it's saying that, PAs are good in these rural underserved areas. And then it says that in these underserved areas, right, they provide a broader spectrum of services. So not only are they needed and they're good, but they do more. So you're adding something on. I kind of just gave it away there. On the other hand, despite this, those would be two different things, as if what I was talking about here, then going down, that's the opposite. That does not work. So I have in addition or thus. Well, in addition works because I'm adding to the point that I made here. I'm adding to that. I'm saying that, yeah, they're cost efficient and they're good, but on top of that, they also offer more services. That's where in addition would work better than thus. 31, your answer is A. 32. At this point, the writer is considering entering the following sentence. In fact, according to the data presented in the table, physician assistants will likely outnumber physicians in 2025. So if I look here, physicians assistants will likely outnumber physicians in 2025. I look at 2025, physicians assistants. That actually doesn't make any sense. The numbers are wrong. So we're not going to keep it. But why? because it is not an accurate interpretation, or it introduces irrelevant information. Well, the information is not irrelevant, it's just not accurate. The answer for 32 is going to be C. 33. Both by merit and from necessity, PAs are likely to greet more patients than ever. So clearly what they're using here is the word patients, right? People that you see, people that go to the doctor. So for patients, I'm going to get rid of A and I'm going to get rid of B. So I have patients then or patients then. It's the two different of the uses of the word then and then than ever before. So I'm not talking about a time period. I'm talking about this, then that. So I would go with D. THEN then is used when talking about periods of time. Okay, going into the last reading for the grammar section, questions 34 to 44. Which choice most effectively combines the underlined sentences? So what we're going to do here is you kind of got to talk them out. For timing purposes, I'm just going to say that your answer is going to be B here. So let's look at this. Popular film franchises are often rebooted in an effort to make their characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audiences. Superhero comic books are periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers. Now, the answer is B. So how does it combine that better? Just as popular film franchises are often rebooted in an effort to make their characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audiences, superhero comic books are periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers. So remember, you're combining the sentences. So this is the best way of using that comma and then combining these two sentences into one sentence. Grammatically makes sense and also flows better than A, C, or D. 35. The practice is almost as elderly as the medium itself and has large part established the ages. So we're not referring to people, we're referring to that practice of the reboot. So is it old, mature, or geriatric? So geriatric, mature, and elderly all deal with like people and talking about like actual person's age. Old works best there. It's the proper word. You're not referring to people, you're referring to that the process of rebooting. So old would be the best choice there. 36. The shift from the golden to the silver age is probably the most successful example of publishers. So first of all, having that colon there right after example, that doesn't make sense. Example, comma, of publishers. Example of publishers, comma, responding. So this definitely doesn't make sense. Example of publishers responding. So you see how I talk that out? You don't need anything there. I can talk out that sentence without the need for that break, without the need for that comma. 36 is going to be D. No punctuation is needed. Like I said, sound them out, okay? And then you're going to notice that you don't need the break in that. You do not need the comma or any sort of punctuation. 37. The start of the golden age. So once again, I would read all this, and then as you get to the question, go to the next sentence that you can look at. He could hurdle skyscrapers and leap an eighth of a mile, run faster than a streamlined train, withstand anything less than a bursting shell, and lift a car over his head. So, and hold down a regular job, wear a bright blue costume, live in the big city of Metropolis. So if I look at all these other things that are being spoken about here, it's all of Superman's superpowers. So clearly this last one in this list should be one of his superpowers. Well, what is it? There it is. Lifts a car over his head. The answer for 37 is A, because it shows his superhuman physical abilities. By contrast, the second Silver Age of comics was marked by characters that, though somewhat simplistic by today's standards, were provided with origin stories, often involving scientific experiments gone wrong. Reflecting the conservatism, engaged in bizarre, were more realistic than their Golden Age counterparts. So which choice most effectively sets the main idea of the following two sentences? So which sentence, like what answer here makes sense with these sentences? Okay. In addition to supervillains, the new, soon-to-be iconic characters of the age, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Hulk among them, had to cope with mundane, real-life problems. So they're regular people, paying rent, all that stuff. So if I'm looking here, I want to know which sentence talks about, that, a lot of these characters are just kind of like normal people. Conservatism? No. Bizarre events? No. They were more realistic. Okay. These two are gone. Doesn't talk about them living regular lives. Scientific experiments gone wrong or realistic than their counterparts. So the answer that sticks out there is D, right? Why does realistic work better? Because we're talking about the realistic parts of their life. Mundane, real life problems, paying rent, dealing with family, squabbles, anger, loneliness. That word realistic sticks out. You're also tying in the golden age, which is important because it's the main idea of the overall reading. 39. So 38, you're going to get D. 39. In addition to supervillains, we just read this. Okay, I see the M dash here. So if I have an M dash here and they're wanting me to kind of close this in, I need another M dash no matter what. So 39 is going to be D. You're only using those M dashes or hyphens if you see another one around. Do not choose them if you do not see another M dash or hyphen around. The writer wants a conclusion to the sentence and paragraph that logically completes the discussion of the Silver Age and provide an effective transition into the next paragraph. Huge hint here. Transition into the next paragraph. Well, what are we talking about in the next paragraph? The Silver Way gave way to the Bronze and the Modern. So it's kind of like a change into the next one. Okay? Although sales remained strong for Golden Age stalwart Superman and to a lesser extent Batman, subsequent decades would show the enduring appeal of these characters. All right, maybe, because it's talking about the future. The distinction between later stages of comic books of history are less well defined than the one between the Golden and Silver Age. Now, this doesn't work because they're saying that they're less well defined, but clearly right here, we're defining it. Bronze and the postmodern. It gets very specific as to the new ages. Get rid of that. Readers increasingly gravitated to the upstarts of the 1960s as the Silver Age draw to a close. All right, so Silver Age drawing to a close. They stuck these upstarts. That kind of highlights, going into the new age. I keep that. These characters themselves underwent significant changes over the course of the Silver Age. That doesn't bring in the next paragraph. So I have 40 narrowed down to A and C. So if I look at A, where it talks about the enduring appeal of these characters, or as the Silver Age drew to a close. Both these choices work. I could see how someone wants to choose A, but I need to choose the answer that is most specific. The answer is most specific is C. Why? Because they specifically mention the Silver Age. They specifically mention the 1960s. So as you go into the later years, the answer for C is more of a specific answer and is overall a better answer. So 40, you are going to get C. 41. More transformations would take place in the medium as the Silver Age gave way. Medium means like, what we're talking about, comic books and comic characters. As the Silver Age gave way to the Bronze and Modern and possibly Postmodern Age. Such efforts have yielded diminishing returns. Okay. Such efforts have yielded diminishing returns even. So we're talking in the present tense here. Would have yielded, were yielding, will yield. All not present tense. The only answer I could use is A, because we're talking in the present tense. 42. Such efforts have yielded diminishing returns as even the complete relaunch of DC's comics superheroes line. Okay, here we go. Proper use of, your possessive. So it's a plural possessive noun. The comics superheroes. Who owns these superheroes? The comics do. So I do need that. So I can get rid of that. Comic superheroes line. So I'm not going to have two apostrophes here. This doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. So I can get rid of B and A. And there we go. By proclamation, the comics superhero makes the best sense. Okay, you don't need anything after superhero. For both commercial and arguably creative reasons, then no transition was more successful. Okay, now the proper word we need here is for the transition between the Golden and silver ages of comic books. So for both commercial and arguably creative reasons, then no transition was more successful. However, nevertheless, yet, okay, if I'm looking at this, for both commercial and arguably creative reasons, however, no transition was more successful. We're not talking about opposites here. So, however, nevertheless, same thing. We're not talking about two opposites. We're just saying, hey, we talked about such as diminishing returns, complete relaunch of the DC comic book superheroes has failed to arrest the steep 2-decade decline of comic book sales. For both commercial and arguably creative reasons, then no transition was more successful. So basically, it's proving the point. It's saying that the ages we talked about in the previous pages were the best. So then would just be the best choice. You're not. This transition word right here is not going against what's being said before. It's the same thing. So 43, you would get A. 44, no transition was more successful than those from, well, clearly, right? It's one transition, the gold to silver age. So if it's one transition, it's going to be that. Successful than that from the gold and silver age. Okay, it's not plural, singular, not singular, but just one transition, not more than one. So 44, you're going to go with C. All right, that ends the grammar portion for SAT practice practice test. Sometimes I talk so much, the words get muddled together. And we're going to move into now SAT practice test 6, the math no calculator section. Okay, we're back. SAT practice test number 6. We are on section 3, math no calculator. As always, just make sure you're looking at your formulas here to see which ones you can use should they come up. Let's get started. Salim wants to purchase tickets from a vendor to watch a tennis match. The vendor charges a one-time service process fee for processing the purchase of the tickets. The equation T equals 15N plus 12 represents the total amount in T dollars. Salim will pay for N tickets. What does the 12 represent in the equation? So the first thing I see here when I see this, I'm thinking Y equals MX plus B. So that 12 is going to be the B. It's going to be that initial cost, right? So the price of one ticket in dollars, well, that would be, over here. The amount of the service fee in dollars, well, that makes sense. I like that. The total amount in dollars Salim will pay for the ticket, well, you would add both and multiply and add that together, so that would be wrong. The total amount in dollars Salim will pay for any number of tickets. That just doesn't make sense. So the answer for number 1 is going to be B. The amount in service fee in dollars, the 12 is that starting line. And then it would get higher as you buy more tickets. Number 2, a gardener buys 2 different kinds of fertilizer. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler materials by weight, and fertilizer B contains 40% filler materials by weight. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contain a total of 240 pounds of filler materials. Which equation models this relationship where X is the number of fertilizer A? So I'm just going to stop there. If X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A, X is going to be by 0.6. It's 60%. So 0.6X I know I'm going to get. And then Y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B. So fertilizer B, 0.4. So 0.4 will be Y. So I can kind of go through my process of elimination here where I have 0.6Y. That's not going to make sense. I can get rid of that. 40 and 60 do not represent percentages, right? They don't have decimals there. So for number 2, I'm going to get B. Number 3, what is the sum of the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i? I equals rad negative 1. Well, I don't care about I equal rad negative 1 because all my answers have I except for A, but we'll see how it works out. So I'm going to set this up. 2 plus 3i plus 4 plus 8i. I add these 6 plus 11i. And there's my answer, C for number 3. 4. 4x squared minus 9 equals px plus t in parentheses multiplied by parentheses px minus t. In the equation above, p and t are constants. Which of the following could be the value of p? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write out 4x squared minus 9 equals, and then I'm going to work this equation out. All right, this multiplication, and I'm going to get p squared x squared minus ptx plus ptx minus t squared. So I see the correlation right there, right? 4x squared, p squared, x squared. So if they want to know the value of p, p will be right here, okay? But this is p squared, and this is just a 4. So p squared would be 2. The answer to number 4 is A. 5. Which of the following is the graph of the equation y equals 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? So I see x minus 5 there. So the first thing I'm going to do is that y-intercept being negative 5, so I can get rid of A, and I can get rid of C. Then I look at my slope. My slope is 2 over 1. It's a positive slope. So that being said, if I have an arrow between B and D, my answer is going to be D with that slope 2 over 1. Number 6. If x equals 2 over 3y and y equals 18, what is the value of 2x minus 3? So let's work this one out. X equals 2/3 multiplied by 18. When I multiply these numbers, 2/3 of 18, you kind of do it in your head, x equals 12. I'm not done yet. Okay, 2x minus 3, and that's important. A lot of kids will just mark that answer 12, but you're not done yet. 2x minus 3. So 2x minus 3, 2 multiplied by 12 minus 3, and I'm going to get 21. The answer to number 6 is A, 21. Number 7. A bricklayer uses the formula N equals 7LH to estimate the number of bricks N needed to build a wall that is L feet long and H feet high. Which of the following correctly expresses L in terms of N and H? So really what you're doing here is if you have N equals 7LH, you want to get L by itself. So to get L by itself, you're gonna move these things over. So N equals, let's go 7H L. I bring that 7H over. L is going to equal N over 7H. So my answer is going to be C. You're really just worried about getting that L by itself. So number 7, you get C. Number 8. The table above shows some values of the functions w and t for which value of x is wx plus tx equals x. So really what you're doing is you're saying this number plus this number equals this number. And really what you can do is just kind of work these out. And as I'm looking at this, I see my answer. Remember, I'm adding these. So let's put a little addition there. So let's start from the bottom. -1 plus 5 is not 5. So that's 5 is not going to be the answer. 3 plus 3 is 4. No. 4 plus 1. No. 3 plus -1. Yeah. 3 plus a negative, you go down 1, that would be 2. That works. So the answer for number 8 is B. Just working them out really quickly. Number 9, if rad x plus rad 9 equals rad 64, what is the value of x? So we can rewrite that. We can go rad x plus 3 equals 8 minus 3 minus 3. Rad x equals 5, right? But remember, what is the value of x? Okay, x, if rad x is 5, x needs to be 25. Never forget that last step. You even saw it over here. You got to do that last step. Same with this. Don't forget that last step. It's an easy question that you don't want to get wrong because you just didn't follow that last step. Number 10, Jamie is preparing for a bicycle race. His goal is to bicycle an average of at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks, so 280 per week for 4 weeks. He bicycled 240 miles the first week, 310 the second week, 320 the third week. Which inequality can be used to represent the number of miles, X, Jamie could bicycle on the fourth week to meet his goal? So first of all, the mileage of that fourth week, that X, needs to be by the mileage for all of the other weeks. So it has to be on this side of the equation. So already I can get rid of B. And, well, that's it. Next, we're talking about 4 weeks here. So really what we're doing is the entire number of miles ran for week 1, 2, 3, and then week 4. You have to eventually divide all that by 4. So when I see 3 here and 1, that doesn't make sense. I can't just put a 1 there and get 4. So I can get rid of A. I look at C, 4, 4, 4. X, well, that would be X over 1 or something else. It's not a totality over 4. I can get rid of that. D works the best. Why? Because I'm adding up all these miles, right? And then I have that average and the 4 on the correct side of the equation. So the best answer for number 10 is going to be D. Moving forward, let's get into the second half of Test 3, 11 through 20. Okay, up to the next question, question number 11. The vertex of the parabola in the xy plane above is 0, c. Which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation y equals negative a parentheses x minus b squared plus c. So the first thing we have to look at is that the vertex for this equation right here would actually be b positive c. So the first thing I can do is get rid of these negatives for c and d. So I've narrowed down to 2. Now, because I have that negative a, what that means is that the parabola will be going downward. So the answer to number 11 would be B. Quick 2 ways to narrow that down. Answer is B. 12. Which of the following is equivalent to 4x squared plus 6x divided by 4x plus 2? So what we can do here is some basic long division. So I take that 4x plus 2, put it over 4x squared plus 6x. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide to see what goes. If I look here and here, I can get x plus 1. And when I bring that down, I'm going to get minus 4x squared plus 2x. These cancel out. I'm going to get a 4x. Then what I do is I subtract that by 4x plus 2, and I'm going to get a negative 2. So if I look here, I see that A is not going to work and B is not going to work. And first of all, when you're looking at this, you can probably see that when you're dividing these two, just looking at it, A and B don't seem like they're going to work. So, I mean, even just looking at it, I can probably get rid of A and B. Now, first thing I notice is I have that negative 2. That works. And then what do I have when I first divided? That x plus 1. There's my answer. 12 is D. 13. 2x squared minus 4x equals t. In the equation above, t is a constant. If the equation has no real solutions, which of the following could be the value of t? So first of all, we're going to evaluate this under this expression, b squared minus 4ac. Now, to have no real solutions, the value has to be negative. So I can just knock these out real quick. Now, 2x squared minus 4x minus t equals 0. Now, let's evaluate this under b squared minus 4a squared. I'm going to get, b squared minus 4ac. I'm going to get negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 divided by negative t is less than 0. Evaluate it. 16 plus 8t less than 0. Subtract 16, subtract 16. 8t is less than negative 16. Divide by 8. Divide by 8t less than negative 2. My only answer I can have then is A, negative 3. So for 13, the answer is A. 14. A laundry service is buying detergent and fabric softener from its supplier. The supplier will deliver no more than 300 pounds in a shipment, so no more than 300 pounds. I use that to help me narrow down, but all of these have less than or equal to 300, so nothing I can narrow down there. Each container of detergent weighs, so container of detergent weighs 7.35 pounds, and each container of fabric softener, so softener, weighs 6.2 pounds. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent, so twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. Let D represent the number of containers of detergent, and S represent the number of containers of fabric softener, where D and S are non-negative integers. Which of the following systems of inequalities best represents this situation? Okay, let's look at this. So first of all, I'm noticing that 7.35 is the detergent. So if I look at 7.3.5 detergent, I don't even see those numbers here, but I'm not going there just yet. I'm just looking. And then I'm going to go fabric softener 6.2, 6.2, 6.2. That's good. So I'm noticing that these numbers are different, 14.7 and 7.35. I'm looking at ways to narrow this down. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent. So twice as many containers of detergent. Okay. Now, it then says, and I'm looking at this as we read this, the first thing I'm noticing is that if it's 7.35 pounds of detergent, okay, now they're not saying that they want to double the poundage of the detergent. Okay, they just want double the number of containers, where it says want to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent. So it has nothing to do with the poundage. So I can get rid of this 14.7, 14.7. I don't like that. So now I have it narrowed down to these two. So 0.6 plus 6.2s plus, so these are the same, right? So the next thing I'm going to look at is less than or equal to 300. Less than or equal, okay, that's the same. The only differences between A and B is D is greater than 2S, or is 2D greater than S. Now, they want double. So look, let's read it again. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. Okay, so 2 times the fabric softener would equal the detergent. 2 times the detergent would equal the, or is greater than or equal to the fabric softener. So the company wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent as fabric softener. So when I look at this, you're going to put it as 2 times the, or the detergent is going to be greater than or equal to 2 times the softeners. That makes sense, right? Because we're buying the double of that, okay? Double the detergent is greater than or equal to the fabric softener doesn't work, because if I go back up here, the service wants to buy at least twice as many. Sorry, I'm just finding my spacing here. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent. So this number is going to be greater than or equal to double that. So that's where this works for A in what is said right there. Okay, kind of a tough question, but if you read it through, you can narrow down to C and D, and then do it again, read it through, get your choices, and then A makes the most sense. Which of the following is equivalent to A plus B over 2 squared? So what we have to do here is the distributive property. So we're going to go A plus b over 2 multiplied by a plus b over 2. And what we would get is the following. A squared plus ab over 2 plus ab over 2 plus b squared over 4. Now I can combine that. I can go a squared plus ab b squared over 4. So if I'm looking at this, the best answer I'm going to get is D. This wouldn't make any sense. This wouldn't make any sense. And then this wouldn't make any sense because of, you would get rid of that. Nope, C doesn't work. So 15, using the distributive property, you are going to get the answer as D. Moving forward, we're going to go into the second part of practice test 3 for the math, where we're talking about the grid-ins. So if a raised to b over 4 equals 16 for positive integers a and b, which is the following possibility. So when I'm looking at this, we're looking at the values of, what can the values of be? So if I have a and then b over 4 equals 16. So like, what can I put here to get 16? Now, if I look at my possible answers, I can do something like this. 2 to the 4th, 4 to the 2nd, 16 to the 1, just to get started, right? So if I wanted to get that, what would my values be? Okay? So the values could be, right, if I wanted 2 to this, so I'd have to put 16 on top, right? So I can get 16. If I wanted that 2, right, I could put 8 up there, and so forth, 2 and 1. So your answers can either be 16, 8, 2, 1. You can also have a 4 in there if you were doing even more examples. So there's a bunch of different answers here. To get this, just what number would you divide up here under there to get 16, and then you can make up your value for a positive integer for a. And your choices could either be, for your answers, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1, and then I gave you examples of how you roll through that. 17, 2 over 3t equals 5 over 2. What is the solution of the equation above? So 2 over 3t equals 5 over 2. We are going to multiply this whole thing by 3 over 2. And I get t equals 15 over 4, or you can put 3.75. Pretty simple, just multiply to get t by itself. 18. In the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. What is the length of CE? So BCD and ACE are similar. So knowing that, BD over CD, so BD over CD equals AE over CE. Now, BCD is a right triangle. So we can use that Pythagorean theorem to get that answer. So I'm going to go 6 squared plus 8 squared equals CD squared. Do those numbers, right? If you calculated that out, you would get CD equals 10. So moving forward, I can do this. 6 over 10 using this. That what I created up here. 6 over 10 equals 18 over CE. 18 times 10 is 180. So I would get this. 6 multiplied by CE over 6 equals 180 over 6, which would give me the answer of 30. Okay? And that is going to be your answer. So 180 over 6, and you get 30 as your answer. You have your proportion up here. You plug everything in, keep working through, and you are going to get 30. 19. How many liters of a 25% saline solution must be added to 3 liters of 10% saline solution to obtain a 15% saline solution? So let's set this up. So I'm going to go 3 times 0.10. Let me set it up here. X times 0.25. That's what we're trying to figure out. And then X plus 3 multiplied by 0.15. Right, obtain a 15% saline solution. So my equation would look something like this. 3 plus 0.25x equals 0.15x plus 3. Keep working this through. 0.30 plus 0.25x equals 0.15x plus 0.45. Let's subtract 30. And let's subtract 15 going this way. And I'm going to get 0.10x equals 0.15. Divide by 0.10, divide by 0.10. X is going to be 1.5, or you can get x equals 3 over 2, because you can chart a lot of, you can put the stuff into the gridding either as a fraction or a decimal. So 1.5 or x equals 3 over 2. Last question. Points A and B line a circle with a radius of 1, and arc AB has a length pi over 3. What fraction of the circumference of the circle is the length of arc AB? Okay. So circumference. Don't mind my chicken scratch, just trying to get through this quickly. Equals C equals 2 pi r. Okay, r being the radius. Now, they give us this, so I'm going to go C equals 2 pi, and the radius is 1, or C equals 2 pi. Okay? Now, let's figure that out. So if circumference equals 2 pi, so the points A and B line a circle with radius 1, and arc AB has a length of pi over 3. So what I can do is pi over 3 multiplied by 1 over 2 pi, and what I'm going to get is 1 over 6. So your answer can be 1 over 6, 0.166, or 0.167. Any of those answers work. So what fraction, right? To find that fraction, what you're going to do is you're going to multiply this part by that part. And there you get your fraction. So 1 over 6, 0.166, or 0.167. And that finishes up SAT Practice Test 6, which, moving on, we're going to go to SAT Practice 6, Section 4, the math calculator section. Let's also talk for a second about if you are confused about any of these problems and some of my explanations on the subscription site. I go into more in depth on some of these harder questions that, especially for math, and just go to that and look at the type of question you're looking for, and you can find the harder math questions explained more in depth. All right, let's move forward to SAT Practice Test 4, the calculator section. SAT Practice Test 6. This is Math Section 4, Calculator section. As always, look at the formulas you get to help you. You can use your calculator for this, which is great. We love calculators. We use them whenever we have a chance. Let's get going. Which expression is equivalent to 2x squared minus 4 parentheses minus parentheses negative 3x squared plus 2x minus 7? So when we're subtracting here, I just kind of write the whole thing out and then put stuff together. So 2x squared minus 4, negative and a negative, plus 3x squared minus 2x, negative, negative, plus 7. I'm going to get 5x squared. 2x is by itself, minus 2x. I actually can already get my answer already because I have 5x squared minus 2x. Those don't match up. So for number 1, the answer is A. Number 2. The graph above shows the positions of Paul and Mark during a race. Paul and Mark each ran at a constant rate, and Mark was given a head start to shorten the distance he needed to run. Paul finished the race in 6 seconds, and Mark finished the race in 10 seconds. According to the graph, Mark was given a head start of how many yards? So a head start is going to be when you're at the 0 time frame. And to see that head start, what we're going to do is look at that y-intercept, right? So the one runner starts here. The other runner has what? Has a head start. Okay, so we look at here, 0, 6, 12, 24. In between would be 18. So we look at that y-intercept and we get the answer as C, 18. That is the head start that was given. Number 3. Snow fell and then stopped for a time. When the snow began to fall again, it fell at a faster rate. So snow was falling. This is accumulation, right? So as it's snowing, more accumulation. So immediately I can get rid of C. That makes no sense. Also, the snow fell and then stopped and then started again. Well, it wouldn't be just the same amount the whole time. That's if it just kept snowing and never stopped. Now, the other thing that's important to see as I have this narrowed down to A and B is that when the snow began to fall again, it fell at a faster rate. So if it's like this, stop, faster rate, I like that. Faster rate and then a slower rate, that does not make any sense. The answer to number 3 is A, based off the information you see in the question. Number 4, a website hosting service charges businesses a one-time setup fee of $350 plus D dollars for each month. If a business paid $1,010 for the first 12 months, including a setup fee, what is the value of D? All right, let's solve this. So first of all, it's 12 months, including and a one-time setup fee plus D dollars for each month. So if it's D dollars for each month, we have 12 months, D dollars plus that setup fee for a total amount of $1,010. Now let's solve for D. Take away that 350. What I'm going to get is 12D equals 660. I'm going to divide by 12, divide by 12. D is going to give me 55. The answer to number 4 is D. Moving down, 5. 6x minus 9y is greater than 12. Which of the following inequality is equivalent? Well, it's pretty easy. I just look at this, and what can I take out of all this? I can take a 3. So I would get 2x minus 3y is greater than 4. I look at that. Look at my answers. 2x minus 3y is greater than 4. Boom. The answer to number 5 is B. Number 6. Where do people get most of their medical information? The table above shows a summary of 1,200 responses to a survey question. Based on the table, how many of those surveyed get most of their medical information from either a doctor or the internet? So I have doctor, internet. I add those together, and I'm going to get 76%. So 76% get their information from either a doctor or the internet. Now, we know the total amount is 1,200, so 76% of 1,200, you're going to get 912. The answer for number 6 is C. 7. The members of a city council wanted to assess the opinions of all city residents about converting an open field into a dog park. The council surveyed a sample of 500 city residents who own dogs. Already it's biased. We want all city residents, and they only did 500 residents who own dogs. Their survey showed that the majority of those sampled were in favor of the dog park. Well, of course they were. They all own dogs. That is not a true representation of the city. Which of the following is true about the city council survey? So it's got to be something negative. As I'm looking here, it shows the majority of city residents. That's not true because they just asked dog owners. It should have included more residents who are dog owners. Exact opposite. It should have included more residents who are not dog owners. The survey sample should have consisted entirely of residents who do not own dogs. Well, that doesn't make sense either because you want all city residents who own dogs and residents who do not own dogs. So for 7, I get rid of C. The survey sample is biased. Good, because it is not representative of all city residents. That is the best answer. 7, the answer is D, as in dog. Number 8, ice cream and topping selections. The table above shows the flavors of ice cream and the toppings chosen by the people at a party. Each person chose one flavor of ice cream and one topping. Of the people who chose vanilla ice cream, which fraction chose hot fudge as a topping? So they chose vanilla and they chose hot fudge. That's 8. And we want to know, of the people who chose vanilla ice cream. Okay, so now you have the vanilla across. So it's 8 plus 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You would have 8. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm counting the wrong way. Wow, big mistake. I'm looking at chocolate. I'm going down. 8 plus 5, who chose vanilla? It would be 8 over 13. And my answer is D. See, I almost made a mistake there because I was counting across, but that represented hot fudge. They want vanilla and the 2 toppings. So 8 over 13, the answer to number 8 is D. Number 9, the total area of a coastal city is 92.1 square miles, of which 11.3 square miles is water. If the city had a population of 621,000 people in the year 2010, which of the following is closest to the population density in people per square mile of land area of the city at the time? So first of all, it's 92.1 square miles. 11.3 is water. So I'm going to go 92.1 minus 11.3, and I'm going to get 80.8. Now, 621,000 people, 80.8. I do that. Then I get my correct number. So, population density in people per square mile of land area, you get 7,685. What is the closest? The answer is B, 7,690. 10. Between 1497 and 1500, Amerigo Vespucci embarked on 2 voyages to the New World. According to Vespucci's letters, the first voyage lasted 43 days longer than the second voyage, and the 2 voyages combined lasted a total of 1,003 days. How many days did the second voyage last? So, X, we're going to put as the days of the second voyage. And then we're going to go X plus 43 is going to be the days of the first voyage. Now, we would go X plus 43 equals 1,003. 2X plus 43 equals 1,003. I can subtract 43 from both sides. I'm going to get 2x equals 960. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X equals 480. And there's your answer. 10 is B. Moving forward, let's get into the next part of the test, starting with question number 11. SAT Practice Test 6, Section 4, Calculator. We're back with question number 11. 7x plus 3y equals 8. 6x minus 3y equals 5. For the solution xy to the systems of equations above, what is the value of x minus y? All right, let's set this up. So firstly, I would do something like this. 7x plus 3y equals 8. 6x minus 3y equals 5. They cancel. 13x plus 0 equals 13. So x equals 1. We get that. Now, we have 7x plus 3y equals 8. So I'm going to substitute that x, that 1. So 7 plus 3y equals 8. Subtract 7. 3y equals 1 y equals 1 over 3. Now, if I wanted to do x minus y, right, that's what they want us to do, 1 minus 1 over 3, and I'm going to get 2/3. So the answer, number 11, is going to be B. 12. So 12 to 14 refer to the following information. So you have your sunflower growth day 0 all the way to 84. And then your sunflower height over time. So you have time going this way, and then you have the height going up. Always good to double check those numbers and see how the charts move. So over which of the following time periods the average growth rate of the sunflower the least? So the growth rate, right, it's getting higher, really fast, and then it kind of evens out. So I'm looking from around here to here. So day 56 to 84, it kind of slows down. So anywhere in between these days, I'm liking that. And there we go, 63 to 84. The answer to number 12 is going to be D. 13. The function h defined by ht equals at plus b, where a and b are constants, models the height in centimeters of the sunflower after t days of growth, during a time period in which the growth is approximately linear. What does a represent? All right, so first of all, when I see this, right, ht equals at plus b, I'm thinking y equals mx plus b. So that a is going to be the slope, right? It's going to be how much it grows. So let's see, I see a grow here, predicted height, predicted number of centimeters, predicted height in centimeters at the beginning of the period, at the end of the period, during the period. None of these talk about growth. The answer is 13 is A. Simple, because you set it up with that equation, and you're going to figure out that it means the slope. 14. The growth rate of the sunflower from day 14 to day 35 is nearly constant. On this interval, which of the following equations best models the height h in centimeters of the sunflower t days after it begins to grow? So, which best models the height in centimeters of the sunflower? Okay, so let's take day 14 and day 35. So day 14 is a little, actually no, I can look here, 36.6. So day 14, 36.6. Sorry, 36.36. That's day 14. And then day 35 is 131. So 35, 131. Now what I'm going to do here is I need to find out like what, if it says on this best equation. So I have to get one of these numbers, right, to see where we start, to see what the slope is. Now the easy way to find what the slope is look, I can take 131, subtract it by 36.36. That is the heights, and the growth rate I can get is this. Well, the growth rate is going to be the slope. Right, these numbers right here. That's a 4.5. So if I take these numbers, 131 minus 36.36, then do the days, 35 minus 14. Do those calculations, you're going to get 4.5. That's the growth rate. The answer to 14 is B. 15. Which of the following equations relates y to x for the values of the table above? Now, if you look at these numbers from 11 to 25 to 39 to 53, the y value increases 14 over 4 each time. It goes up by 1 on the x. So if I take 14 over 4, I can kind of, 14 is 7, 2 is 2. I get 7 over 2. So what relates that, right? The only relation I see here for that 7 over 2, that 14 over 4 as it goes up by 1, is going to be D. There's that 7 over 2. So the y value increases 14 over 4 each time x goes up by 1. 14 over 4, I knock that down to 7 over 2. The only thing that shows me that is going to be D. 16. Triangles A, B, C, and D, E, F are shown above. Which of the following is equal to the ratio of BC over AB. So first of all, these are similar triangles, right? Next, I'm just going to maybe figure out what these angles are. So if I do the calculation 90, 32, this one I'm going to get 58. 58, 90, this one I'm going to get 32. So what you can do is you can actually rotate the triangle, like rotate this triangle to make it equal. So I would get BC over AB. So BC over AB equals DF over DE. So BC over AB, if I rotate it, equals DF over DE. I'm sorry, it's a brutal E right there. So DF over DE, the answer DF over DE, the answer to 16 is going to be B. Moving forward, number 17. So questions 17 and 19 refer to the following information. When designing a stairway, an architect can use the riser tread formula, 2h plus d equals 25, and that's very important. We're going to go back to that a lot, where h is the riser height in inches and d is the tread depth in inches. For any given stairway, the riser heights are the same and the tread depths are the same for all steps in that stairway. The number of steps in a stairway is the number of its risers. For example, there are 5 steps in the stairway. In the figure above, the total rise of a stairway is the sum of the riser's height as shown in the figure. First question. Which of the following expresses the riser height in terms of the depth tread? So really all I'm doing is I have 2h plus d equals 25, and I want to get h by itself. So 2h equals 25 minus d. Okay, let's divide by 2. H equals 25 minus d over 2. Okay, if I look at this, h equals 1/2 of 20, 1/2 of 25 minus d. My answer is going to be B. Look at your answers to help you. When you have this, look at your answers and then solve it. 18. Some building codes require that for indoor stairways, the tread depth must be at least 9 inches and the riser height must be at least 5 inches. According to the riser tread formula, which of the following inequalities represents the set of all possible values for the riser height that meets this code requirement? Okay, the depth must be at least 9 inches and the height must be at least 5. So D would be greater than or equal to 9. And the height greater than or equal to 5. Now we go back to that formula. 2h plus d equals 25. D equals 25 minus 2h. 25 minus 2h is greater than or equal to 9. So let's do this. Let's subtract 25. I'm going to get negative 2h is greater than or equal to 9 minus 25. Now I'm going to get a negative number here, so I can just get rid of that negative. So I could get 2h greater than or equal to 25 minus 9. 2h greater than or equal to 16. H greater than or equal to 8. So if I have less than or equal to 8. I'm sorry, it switches. My bad. When I do that negative 1. Less than or equal to 8. I look here. I have 5. There's my beginning number. And then I have 8. I like it. 18. I'm going to get C. 19. An architect wants to use the riser tread formula to design a stairway with a total rise of 9 feet, a riser height between 7 and 8 inches, and an odd number of steps. With the architect's constraints, which of the following must be the tread depth in inches of the stairway? 1 foot equals 12 inches. Okay, so H is going to be your risers, and N is going to be our steps. So we know that N is going to be 108 inches over h, and it's given that the height, okay, between 7 and 8. So 7 and 8. Okay. Let's move forward. So if we know that, we can set up the following. 108 over 8 for that height is less than 108 over h, which is less than 108 over 7. Or we can switch that. 108 over 8 is less than n, and that's less than 108 over 7. Sorry for squishing that in. Now we know that 108 over 8 is less than 14, right? Because we're talking about the number of inches we have to get. So, and then also that 108 over 7 is going to be greater than 15. So looking at this and having this set up, n can only be 15. Why? Because it's an odd number. Remember, they wanted an odd number of steps. So that being said, all I can do to get the height would be, because I'm in those constraints, h equals 108 over 15, and I get 7.2. So let's put that in, right, into our initial formula. And I'm just going to go over here to finish off. 2h plus d equals 25. 7.2 is 2 times the height, so I'm going to get 14.4 plus d equals 25. Subtract the 14.4, subtracted by 14.4, and I'm going to get d equals 10 over 6. I go up. My answer to 19 is C. 20. What is the sum of the solutions to x minus 6, parentheses, multiplied by x plus 0.7 equals 0? So really, to get to this, right, I would have the solutions would be 6 for the x and then negative 0.7 for the other x, right, to get 0. Now, if I add these together, if I'm adding 6 plus a negative 0.7 on my calculator, I'm going to get 5.3 as my answer. So the answer is C. Moving forward, we'll get into kind of the meat of section 4, questions 21 through 30. SAT practice test number 6, question number 21. A study was done on the weights of different types of fish in a pond. A random sample of fish were caught and marked in order to ensure that none were weighed more than once. The sample contained 150. So let's just get back to it. So a random sample of fish were caught and marked to ensure that none were weighed more than once. That's important. So it's an actual random sampling. The sample contained 150 largemouth bass, of which 30 weighed more than 2 pounds. Which of the following conclusions is best supported by the data? The majority of all fish in the pond weigh less than 2 pounds. Well, we can't confirm that. The only thing we confirm is that it is a random sample setting of fish being caught. So the only thing we can confirm is the information that we're actually gathering is that out of this sample, 150 largemouth bass, 30% weighed more than 2 pounds. So if I look at this, the majority of all fish in the pond weigh less than 2 pounds. I don't know that. The average weight of all the fish in the pond is approximately 2 pounds. I can't do that. Okay. Approximately 30% of all fish in the pond weigh more than 2 pounds, or approximately 30% of all largemouth bass. Now remember, okay, the sample contained 150 largemouth bass. That's the only thing we can confirm. 21, the answer is D. 22, the number of states with 10 or more electoral votes in 2008. We have the electoral votes and the frequency of the states over here. In 2008, there were 21 states with 10 or more electoral votes. Based on the table, what was the median meaning middle, number of electoral votes for 21 states? So if it's 21 states, okay, the middle number is going to be the 11th. on the list. So if I look at the 11th on the list, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, this falls on the 11th. Okay, so by looking at that, even if I count up this way and then down this way, I find my middle. So the answer is going to be B, 15, because you're looking for that middle value, and that's the 11th number, the 11th state. You go this or you go up. There you go. Let's move now to question number 23. Height versus time for a bouncing ball. We have our height going up here, and then the time elapsed moving across this way. As part of an experiment, a ball was dropped and allowed to bounce repeatedly off the ground until it came to rest. The graph above represents the relationship between the time elapsed after the ball was dropped and the height of the ball above the ground. After it was dropped, how many times was the ball at the height of 2 feet? So if we look at 2 feet, we go across this way. So how many times was it at 2 feet? Not over 2 feet, not under 2 feet, but at 2 feet. Once, twice, 3 times. The answer is C. Big thing to remember here is they're not asking how many times was it above 2 feet. They're just asking how many times was it at 2 feet. 24. A customer's monthly water bill was $75.74. Due to a rate increase, her monthly bill is now $79.86. To the nearest tenth of a percent, by what percent did the amount of the customer's water bill increase? Okay, so to find this percent, we're going to go 79.86 minus 75.74. Put that over 75.74. Okay. Do those calculations, you're going to get 0.54. Now we need a percentage times 100, and we would get 5.4%. The answer to 24 is D. 25. Some values of the linear function f are shown in the table above. What is the value of f3? So it goes from 0, 2 to 6. So we have to find out what's in between there. So I'm going to 0 like 1, 2, 3. Okay. Though it's not listed, we have to figure that out. Then I have over here -2. I don't know this one. For 2, I have 4. Okay, and then I need to know what I would have for 3. Now, by just looking at this, I can tell that the values, if I were to do them, to try to get from here to here at a, how would I say it? At the same number, okay, to go from -2 to a number to here, I like using that number 3. So -2 plus 3 is going to give me 1, okay, and then 1, if I go from -2 to 3, okay, then I'm going to go 1 plus 3 is going to get me to 4. So, and then if I move up, so I go 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I have a 16 here. All right, so what am I adding to each one? I'm going to add, I think, I'm just going to work it out as I'm adding 3. So I have 7, 10, 13, and then I have 16. So it works. You're adding 3 to each number. Now I put that 3 there. That's probably a little confusing because that should be a 1. So I've added 3 to each number. And so if they want F3, as I added 3 to go up these numbers to get to 16, so I'm using the ones they give me to help. For 3, right? F of x is 3. I'm going to get 7. So 25, I'm going to get B. Moving forward to 26. 26. A gear ratio is the number of teeth to 2 connected gears. The ratio of, okay, we don't even need to know what doing this, but really they want to know. Once again, we're saving time, right? I don't have to read this. If gear A is rotated at 100 RPMs per minute, so gear A is 100, what is the number of revolutions per minute by gear C? Now, the first thing I notice is that gear A has 20 teeth. Gear C has 10 teeth. So for every 1 rotation of A, because it has 20, 10 is half of 20. So this is going to go around once and then twice. Okay? So if this is at a rate of 100, it's going to be twice because this is smaller. 100 times 2. The answer would be C, 200. If gear A turns once, it will pull 20 teeth of gear B, and then it'll turn 20 teeth of gear C. Once again, boom, boom, we're going twice. It's the easiest way to figure it out. Question number 27. In the xy plane, the graph of 2x squared minus 6x plus 2y squared plus 2y equals 45 is a circle. What is the radius of a circle? So basically what this is this is a completing of the square question. So if I set up the equation for the completion of x minus squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now we want to know the radius. So if I fill this out, I'm going to get x squared minus 3x and a space because I have to do that square plus y squared plus y, another space, equals 45. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 2 to get rid of, well actually that's the first thing we did was divide by 2 to get rid of those 2's. So I would just put a 2 over here because I did it up here to get this. Okay. 45 divided by 2. Now, moving forward, I have to fill in this graph with the squares. So I would get x squared minus 3x plus 2.25. Okay, that's using that 3, completing that square, plus y squared plus y plus, now there's a 1 here. So if we complete that square, I'm going to get 0.25 equals 45 over 2. Now, I don't need to solve this side because they just want to know what the radius is. So it would be 45 divided by 2 plus 2.25 plus 0.25. And if we do that, you're going to get 25. And then it's r squared, right? So what would r be? R would be 5 because you get 25 over here. The answer to 27 is A. Once again, you don't have to do the left side of the equation to solve it. 28. 2 points on a number line are both 3 units from the point with coordinate -4. The solution to which of the following equation gives the coordinate of both points? So let me draw this out real quick. So I have x, I have -4, and then I have x. They're both 3 units from one another. Okay? And then I have these equations that have to work here. Okay? So if I look at this, the solution to which of the following equation gives the points to both. So if I'm starting at -4 minus this x, I'm going to get 3, right? That solves that. Same thing over here. X minus a -4 equals x plus 4. So as I do this, right, this is where I'm getting to each of these sides. I can switch this. So I can go x minus -4 equals -3. X plus 4 equals -3. And then I get that x plus 4 equals -3. And if I have that, I can see that my answer is going to be x plus 4 equals 3. Okay, so you set it up with the x, -4x, and then you're figuring out, well, how am I getting here? So -4 minus this x gives me 3 units, and then you solve it, works both ways, and you would get x plus 4 in absolute value equals 3. So 28, you are going to get A. You could also, first of all, you're going 3 units, so I can get rid of these 2 really quickly. Then you just try the 2 differences, and you'll see that, the plus and the minus differences, and you'll see that A is going to work better. So you can narrow those down to 2 quickly and then continue on with A and B left. 29. The motor powers a motor powers a model car so that after starting from rest, the car travels s inches in t seconds, where s equals 16t rad t. Which of the following gives the average speed of the car in inches per second over the first t seconds after it starts? So the average speed, okay, is going to equal s over t, right? That's on my inches over seconds. That's my average speed. Also, I know that s equals 16 rad t, so I can get s over t equals 16 t rad t over t. Okay, once I kind of move this forward, okay, I'm going to get rid of my t's here, so I can get s over t equals 16 rad t, and there's my answer. Okay, so not a super hard question, just having to know how to set it up. Answer 29 is B. 30. The scatter plot below shows the amount of electric energy generated in millions of megawatt hours by nuclear sources over a 10-year period. Of the equations, which best models the data in the scatter plot? So first of all, we know this is a quadratic. Okay, it's going this way. Now it's going up. Okay, so what I'm gonna notice as I do this, so of the scatter plot, which best models the equation? Now the quadratic is upside down. Okay, so I'm going to get a negative in the beginning, so I can get rid of A and I can get rid of C. Then looking here, I have negative 745.73 and positive 705.43. Well, look where we start, right? Y equals mx plus b. B, where are we starting on the y-intercept? Right around here. That's a positive number. Positive 745.73. The answer is D. You can answer this question very quickly. Even though it's number 30, you can answer it very quickly. It's upside down. I'm going to have a negative. Get rid of A, get rid of C. Secondly, y equals mx plus b. I see a negative and a positive. There we go. It's a positive number. There's my positive number. The answer is D. Moving forward, we are going to get into the final 31 to 38, the grid-ins for SAT Practice Test 6, Math Section 4. All right, SAT Practice Test 6, we are on to the grid-in problem. So let's start. Question number 31. A group of friends decided to divide the $800 cost of a trip equally among themselves. So $800 cost of a trip equally among themselves. When two of the friends decided not to go on the trip, those remaining still divided the $800 cost equally, but each friend's share of the cost increased by $20. How many friends were in the group originally? So let's look at this. So if I have $800, okay, equals, I'm going to go 8 times 10. 800 equals 8 times 100, which equals 10 times 80. So what I can do here is, if I look at this, and just think for a second, 800 divided by 10 people is $80 a person. Okay? Now, if I go 2 less, 800, 8 people is $100. There's that 20. So 10 originally, because when you divide it by 8, you get $20 more, and 2 people dropped out. Now let's go back and look at this again, just to see how we set this up. So a group of friends decided to divide the $800 cost of a trip equally among themselves. When 2 of the friends decided not to go on the trip, those remaining still divided the cost equally, but each friend's share of the cost increased by $20. So what you could do here is, personally, I would start with some simple numbers. That's where you get that 10. 800 divided by 10 is $80 per person. Then 800 divided by 8 equals $100 per person. It just makes it easier. It makes the math easier to figure out, and using those, starting off with that 10 helps you because it's a good starting point to see it. And also, they're not going to ask a question where the numbers are going to be real random. Okay, they know you can answer it quickly. So if you see a question like this, start off with some of those simple numbers, and then you kind of lead your way there. So that that was the extra $20. So how many people originally started out in the trip? The answer is 10. 32. What value of x satisfies the equation above? Well, first of all, let's kind of multiply, get these numbers out. So I have 10x minus 40 minus 15 plus 8x equals 7. Moving forward, I'm going to take this 40, take this 15, that's 55. And I'm going to get I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. This is going to be a negative. Okay. So if I did that, I would get 62. Then I have my x's. 10 minus 8 is 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2. I get x equals 31. So the answer number 32 is 31. Just kind of ironical. 33. A laboratory supply company produces graduated cylinders, each with an interval radius of 2 inches and an interval height of 7.75 inches and 8 inches. Which is one possible volume rounded to the nearest cubic inch of a graduated cylinder produced by this company? So remember, whenever you see something about a cylinder, always go back to the beginning and look at your graph. So I'm going to draw this out. I might butcher it, not a good drawer, but just bear with me. So our height, volume. So the radius is 2. The height, I'm going to go in between these, so I'm going to go 7.8. Volume equals pi r squared h. Volume equals pi 2 squared 7.8. Volume equals, if you solve this, remember, do it on your calculator, 97.968. Volume equals 98. Remember, rounded to the nearest cubic inch. There we go. 33 is 98. 34. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals 3x squared minus 14x intersects the graph of y equals x, the points 0, 0, and AA. What is the value of A? So if we were to get x by itself, so y equals x, right? So I'm going to get x by itself. X equals 3x squared minus 14x. Subtract x, I get 0 equals 3x squared minus 15x. I can divide by 3. So I get 0 equals x squared minus 5x. 0 equals x, and then I have x minus 5. So x equals 0, y equals 0. X minus 5, because of that, must equals 0. So x equals 5 or y equals 5. So what is the value of A? A equals 5. The answer, number 34, is 5. 35. The line with the equation 4 over 5x plus 1 over 3y equals 1 is graphed in the xy plane. What is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept? So if it's the x-coordinate of the x-intercept, that helps us because y is going to equal 0. So all we can do here is 4 over 5x plus 1 over 3, 0 equals 1. So let's flip it. 5 over 4, parentheses 4 over 5x equals 1. Do that. X equals, solving for x, 5 over 4. So what is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept of the line? X equals 5 over 4. 36. Andrew and Maria each collected 6 rocks, and the masses of the rocks are shown in the tables above. The mean of the masses of the rocks Maria collected is 0.1 kilogram greater than the mean of the masses of the rocks Andrew collected. What is the value of x? All right, so let's look at this. First of all, I want to see what they have in common and get rid of that. So Andrew has 2.7, Maria has 2.7, Andrew has 3.1, Maria has 3.1, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing else, is the same as I look through this. Now remember, if you added up each rock Andrew collected, if you added 0.1, you would get Maria rocks. It would be 0.6 kilograms. Now if we add these two, you would add Andrew's up, you're going to get 11. Maria's up, you are going to get 9. Now remember, Maria's total must be 0.6 higher. So we have 9. Then we also have to get to 11, right? So we're adding 2, and we're adding that 0.6. So what is the value of x? How much higher does it have to be? You would get 2.6. The answer, number 36, is 2.6. 37. Jeremy deposited X dollars in his investment account on July 1st, 2001. The amount of money in the account doubled each year until Jeremy had $480 in the investment account on January 1st, 2005. What is the value of X? So we have 2001, 2002, 2003. I don't like the way that looks. 2004 and 2005. Now it doubles, so x2, then that doubles, that's going to be 4, that doubles 8, that doubles 16, till we get $480. Okay, so what I can do here is I can divide this by 16. So $480 divided by 16, meaning the doubling over those 5 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 480 divided by 16, I get 30. Okay. Now I can also do 30 times 16, and I'm going to get 480. So it checks out. So what is that initial value? That initial value is going to be 30. 38. A school district is forming a committee to discuss plans for the construction of a new high school. Of those invited to join the committee, 15% are parents, 45 are teachers from the current high school, 25% are school and district administrators, and the 6 remaining individuals are students. How many more teachers were invited to join the committee than school and district administration? Okay, let's look at this for a second. We have 100% of people were invited. Take away 15% that were parents. Take away 45% that were teachers. Take away 25% that were school and district administrators. What do we have left? We have 15%. Okay, students. So 0.15 x equals 6, because that's how many students there were. Okay. I solve that. Divided by 0.15 divided by 0.15. I'm going to get x equals 40. Okay. Now here's what's interesting. So if I have 15x equals 6, divide by 15, divide by 15, 6 divided by 0.15, I get x equals 40. So that gives me the number of total people invited, right? Because 15% of what number is 6, and that's going to be 40. So that's why I have my total number there. So if I have 0.45, 40, okay, because I'm doing the teachers, that would be what? That would be 18 teachers. Then I'm going to go 0.25 out of that 40 is going to be 10. So 10 school and district administrators. So all you do is 18 minus 10, and I'm going to get 8. So there are 8 more teachers than school and district admin invited. The answer to 38 is 8. Very interesting. A lot of these answers kind of tied into the number questions, which is kind of weird. But anyway, that ends practice test number 6. Moving forward, you can then go into practice test number 7, and just always be aware that we do have the harder math questions answered on other videos. So if you want to check that out, they're explained more in depth, other ways to solve them. Feel free to do that.